Blog Talk Radio.
Dedicate our lives to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We rooting, and we go into that fight to land on the line.
What up, boxing fans? This is the Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carlson. We are live on a Monday, kind of late afternoon, early dinner time. I don't really eat dinner time at dinner time. I don't eat dinner time? I'll stop. Anyway, hopefully these dates right now don't mess with you too much. I did the show last Wednesday, or was it Monday? I can't remember now. But anyway, Tuesdays right now, ever since the pandemic has gone the other way, right, and getting back to normal life, my schedule's a little clogged up at the moment. So hopefully it'll settle in and we'll be able to do every Tuesday. But anyway, we are back to talk boxing. Obviously from this weekend, Shakur Stevenson failed to impress, unfortunately, once again. We'll get into some of that. He is receiving a ton of criticism, some of it rightfully so, a lot of it rightfully so. I mean, the guy did talk about Sugar Ray Leonard. He's cut from the same cloth from, and Floyd Mayweather and them. And then, the broadcasters. Of course, most broadcasters are just going to lay it on thick, right? But they're doing some shit like after 15 fights and all this, that, and the third. It's just silly. Some of this stuff is just so silly, and it ends up backfiring most of the time because here you are talking about this guy. Look what he's accomplished in 15 fights compared to Floyd Mayweather in the likes of other guys. It's like, okay, so who did he fight, though? And don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with who he's been fighting as a prospect-level guy. I understand the vacant WBO was technically a title. I look at that as a secondary title. Not all WBOs are secondary titles. I'm not saying that. But when it's a vacant top rank, battle, look who he fought. To me, that guy's just not on the highest of levels. But it's going to go down as the WBO championship. Don't get me wrong, of course. But I still look at him as a prospect. So through whatever it is, 15 fights, 16 fights, I don't have a problem with who he's been matched with. A guy like Christopher Diaz was a good fight for him in other fights. But it's just the overhypedness that puts a lot of pressure on him. And like I said, he's doing it to himself too because he's the one saying everybody's, he's the boogeyman and everybody's ducking him. And like I previously mentioned, I'm cut from the same cloth as a Sugar Ray Leonard. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Jose Pedraza's performance as well. Jeremias Ponce stopped Ritson over the weekend as well on DAZN over in the UK. Shouts out to the UK. Obviously, that card was on ESPN. Who's, Stevenson going to match up with next? Is it going to be Herring like it seemed like it was going to be planned? Or is it going to be Valdez? I kind of hope both. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll preview this busy, yet nondescript weekend. Quality over quantity would not be the way I would choose to describe this weekend. That's kind of how I looked at it in my player life. I wasn't going to be a player that, just tried to spray the field. Oh, wow, I used the baseball term that really backfired me on that. But anyway, my point is it was quality over quantity. That's what I believed in. Okay, as much quality as possible. Quantity, just to be like, yeah, boom, 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 boom. Nah. Anyway, I'm all over the place. Teofimo Lopez defends his belts. It is a mandatory with George Kambosos on Trilla. And by the way, we're going to talk about this new Triller Pass subscription. What am I missing here? If you look at the price point, even if you look at the price point damn near with that year subscription, although I don't know any other fights, but I'm going to give you a year subscription. But yeah, I'm trying to make sense, if at all possible, to make sense of this Triller Pass subscription, because to me, it's like, so you're going to have a pay-per-view every month then? Because even if it's every other month, the price point just doesn't line up anyway. Some of these undercard, well, let's just keep going on this. Teofimo Lopez, of course, that headlines it. There is some interesting undercard fights on that. Jermall Charlo against Montiel, some undercard there. Even the JCC and the JCC Junior, if he's still part of the family, Junior's going against Anderson Silva. We got a pay-per-view exhibition as well. The first one on Triller, like I mentioned, with Teofimo, Charlo on Showtime. In the undercard stuff, DAZN, ESPN, Inoue the Monster returns. Michaela Mayer returns as well. DAZN Munguia. Munguia was in somewhat of an interesting fight with Sulecki, but now that's kind of turned to not happening, unfortunately. So we are going to preview this weekend, like I mentioned, the main events. Hopefully they're action-packed. That's what I'm hoping for. Action-packed, fun in the ring, and then a knockout. I think if you look at I think that's possible if you look at all the main events. But there are some, Andy Venice against Jonah Carroll, or, there's undercards. There is some Isaac Dogbe against Adam Lopez. I think that's a good, interesting undercard fight. So that's I've been telling you this for a little bit here. That's basically what June is. The undercard fights are actually, if I'm looking forward to something, that's mostly what it is. Now, next week, the main events, there's some good ones, but it's still not like knock your socks off, so to speak. But anyway, so we will preview and predict the weekend. There's a lot going on. That is for sure. There is plenty of current fight news that we'll get to. Wilder and Fury have a presser tomorrow. I believe it's in L.A. They also announced the undercard fights, and two of the undercard fights I really, really like, man. This is a good undercard, solid undercard. Nothing that just blows you away, but it's contender, or I should say fringe contender and prospect driven, and it's all heavyweight. So I like that idea. There's a little bit of a rumor out there for a fall fight at welterweight, which would be a rematch fight. Okay, and this would be a big fight. We'll talk a little bit about that. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll try to make some sense, if at all possible, about that Triller Pass subscription. Teofimo Lopez not only in action, but he redid his top-ranked deal. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk some about that Showtime, the Kings, about the four Kings, Duran, Leonard, Hagler, and Hearns. The documentary, I actually just wrapped up the 4-part episode series last night. I watched the first two back-to-back. It was super late at night, so I held off, watched the third, and then watched the fourth yesterday. And it was really well done. I really liked how they mixed real-life politics, social stuff, not just here, but in Panama, like just everywhere, everything, And being a really little kid in the 80s, most of the 80s, I knew a lot about what was going on, or I didn't know a lot about what was going on, I should say. But, as I got into my 20s and obviously even in my 30s, then I learned a whole lot about that time period and growing up under, well, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. Also, of course, some current fight news out there. Like I mentioned, the big PBC welterweight fight that is possibly, don't quote me on this, but possibly in the works. And then, of course, we'll wrap up the show like we normally do with a boxing Twitter segment where we read just bomb-ass, great, meaningful, right-on-the-button tweets, right? So it's not all negative or funny negative or whatever. But we also expose some fanboys and, of course, media members acting as fanboys. That's the boxing Twitter segment. And if anybody's a hardcore fight fan or call themselves hardcores, you're probably on boxing Twitter. Anyway, so there is a fair amount to talk to. Talk to? Who am I talking to? I'm going to talk to John here in a short little bit. But if this is your first time listening to the Rope A Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope A Dope Radio. Now, you don't have to go to Blog Talk and Rope A Dope and download the show directly there or listen to the browser if you don't want to. You can find the platform on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, really almost across the board. We're also part of the Grueling True Sports Podcast Network, which can be found almost everywhere. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. It's boxing, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, everything in between. And one more thing, if you're thinking about cutting the cord or you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's called AT&T TV. Plans start as low as $69.99 a month. Simple pricing. No hidden fees, no annual contracts. Of course, you can stream it anywhere on any device. The cloud DVR is available. And if you sign up for the choice package right now, you get a free year of HBO Max. That's AT&T TV. Okay. Now we're going to get to the recap because, if you've listened to the show, we like to start in the ring. Now, there is some breaking news that happens from time to time where we start outside the ring, but we like to start inside the ring. And, main event-wise, we're going to get to it, right? Pedraza, these little plus 145s and plus 210s, and even Figueroa was almost at some places a plus 300. These little pluses have been paying off. Donaire, the only one that didn't pay off in the last, 4 out of the last, 5 or 6 weeks was Jose Ramirez, because he was a slight favorite, right? Yeah, he was a slight. No, he's a slight underdog. What am I saying? But once again, a plus works out. Pedraza takes out Julian Rodriguez, but we'll get into that in just a second. Nakatila didn't have much to offer for the highly skilled Shakur Stevenson, who, I've mentioned this plenty of times. The first handful of outings as a professional fighter, transitioning from the amateur game, where, of course, he won a silver medalist, or he was a silver medalist. Remember the Mike Conlon thing? They were lining up. Conlon was dusting off these dudes easily, looking like he had power. People were saying, Shakur, man, you're too amateurish. Then all of a sudden, a couple more bouts go by. Shakur kind of laps him in the prospect level anyway, the rising prospect level, whereas Conlon kind of fell off, and I think he's at 122 still, or did he go back to 122? I forgot. I think he is. But, Stevenson now kind of seems like and so he looked really good. Like, oh, dude, he's going to have a little power, this, that, and the third, just to finish what I was saying. And then Stevenson now lately, what is this, 3 in a row, that amateur stuff is starting to come out. And the lack of activity in early rounds is one thing, right? It's not the stupidest thing to do to be safe for a little bit, figure the guy out, let him walk into a trap and whatnot, which that right hook, two separate times, should have been the first knockdown. It was two separate knockdowns, really. First one didn't get called. I suppose if you look at the ref's angle may have, because the feet were lined up. They were stepping on each other's feet all night. But the feet were lined up to where it did kind of look like a trip, like from a certain angle. It's easy to see the replay and be like, dude, you could see the space between their feet. That wasn't a trip. That was a right hand, counter knockdown. And the other one, he did get it. Once you've kind of been like, all right, dude, we all know you're not on my level. I'm not saying there you just got to dust this dude off and just spark him out, concussion punch him, or else it doesn't count. I'm not really one of those guys that just love knockouts, and that's it. Don't get me wrong. I love me some knockouts, and that's what gets everybody super excited. But the problem with Stevenson is, he was averaging I can't even remember, was it 20? I can't remember. 20-something, mid-20s to was it even 30 punches around? I don't know. It wasn't a lot. It took him maybe to the fifth round or fifth round just to land double-digit punch stats on this dude. And nothing, I'm not trying to rip this dude. What was this for the vacant WBO with Bob Only, the vacant top rank belt? It was just a kind of a non-performance. It was a very subpar performance. It was lacking in a lot of ways, and it just took a while. You saw Shakur jabbing and pot-shotting. Nakatila, even in the second round, he landed a nice left hook. And I think that's that second round where that right hand should have been called a knockdown. In the fourth round, it was, like I mentioned. But come fifth and sixth round, especially when he got tagged, he started moving a whole lot. A whole lot. And I don't know, dude. The whole fight, it was just settling for one shot here and there. Now his opponent, I think they said he landed 28 punches out of 305 thrown. And 305, for that many rounds is not many. But, they're trying to play it off like it was just a defensive masterpiece. And had this been against Oscar Valdez or something like that, or even Jamel Herring, that would be different. But, and I'm not trying to put those guys in the Hall of Fame either, but, I guess once you say you're Sugar Ray Leonard, you're in that cloth in Floyd Mayweather, and then they do the big old bonanza of cherry-picking some through 15 fights. Well, let's go 2 to 3 years, or let's go in the first 4 years compared to the first 4 years, because that's all that matters, or your first titleist. Who was Floyd's first title against? Oh, that's right, a lineal champ who hadn't lost at the weight class, who had only stepped up to 135, Geraldo Hernandez I'm talking about, and lost to Oscar. He hadn't lost. Now, sure, he was a vet. He was older, no doubt. He retired. But Floyd, look what Floyd did to him, though. You know what I mean? And Hernandez said it himself, this dude's going to be champion for a while. And they had a bond. And Mayweather talked about how he respected him, and I believe he, paid for his funeral fees and all that for the family and all that, because he always respected that he gave him that shot, that title shot. And, I remember that story, Larry Merchant, talking to Roger Mayweather, R.I.P., saying, this is too much. This is too much. This is going to be too much for your son. And was it Roger or was it Floyd Sr. that said, I think it was Roger, said we're going to cook him up like chicken, 9 minutes. There was a time, just off base, when I was once again a kid, that people literally used to put chicken, raw chicken, in the microwave for 10 minutes, and it was good to go. when I look back at that time, and if you're home, you do that, hey, man, I've partaken in that when I was a kid. I'm not trying to diss you, but damn, that's fucked up. Anyway, I remember that line, though. We're going to cook them like chicken, 9 minutes in the mic or something like that. Anyway, my point is, and I'm going all over the place because there's not much to fucking talk about in this fight, to be honest with you. But, yeah, just settling for a nice shot here and there. And then moving out of range. And like I said, I'm not saying go risk it. He kept using the word scary. This guy was scary. And some people took that as I was scared of him. And, obviously he's worried about getting hit flush in fights, especially the last few, but which you should worry about it to an extent, of course. But I think he meant like the guy was scared, so he kept not wanting to, commit or something too. Neither of these guys really were committing, but it was just a blah, like I said this next week, a nondescript performance. It was lackluster, dude. And Stevenson is being hyped like he's Mayweather, the next Mayweather, and it's just too early. And like I've mentioned, I don't actually have one bit of problem how he's been moved as far as the opponent selection. Clearly, he got like a secondary vacant belt at 126. I didn't mind that fight at the time, Joet Gonzalez, right? I don't mind the Christopher Diaz. I don't mind some of these fights because I look at him as a prospect becoming a contender. And at 130, considering he's fought at 130, I'm not, you got to put him in contender range. I'm sure as hell not going to put him in the top 10. Pound for pound, like I saw in the last month or so, few, not many, but a few people have said that. But in the same breath, you can't lose sight of he's very skilled. And when he shows it, he wasn't even barely doing two-punch combos. Like, we get sick of a 1-2. Right, we get sick of that. 1-2, 1-2. It's all this guy does is throw 1-2. And I'm not talking about Shakur, but just in general, like boxing folks complaining about someone. Dude, that's all he's got is the 1-2, or it's all he's looking for is that left hand or whatever, My thing is, you don't have to throw a 5, 6, 7 punch combination, rapid fire. We're not even talking about that. But when dude's not on your level, time to try to get dude out of there. Or at least dominate him. You have to clear-cut win the fight and look good doing it. And looking good doing it doesn't mean concussion punch all the time. It means, like if dude would have landed something big in a couple more rounds, he could have won the round because there wasn't much going on, is what I mean. Like, we all know Stevenson's better than this dude. We knew it going in. Now we know it even more. But the guy has a lot of potential, man, and he's winning a lot of rounds. And I've been giving him a pass for a little bit these last 3 now. They're starting to add up, and we have to see him against Herring and then Oscar Valdez because it looks like Oscar has a fight already. Herring did make a good point about, well, when I wanted to do something for more legacy at the time with Valdez, who's been a quote-unquote champion, right? He's been a champion at 2 different weight classes now. People were saying I was ducking Stevenson. But when Stevenson now doesn't want to fight me, Herring was making a good point. Now he wants to fight Oscar. But he was, screaming that everybody's ducking him. Well, I just think he should fight Herring, who's a solid veteran fighter, and then let Oscar Valdez fight who he's going to fight because he's already going to fight somebody, and then fight him after, whether that's in December, or whatever, or maybe later than that, Maybe it'll be, or not later, you're not going to be much later than December, right, in this year. But what I'm talking about. Maybe it'll be, next year early or something like that. But, yeah, dude, it was just a really nondescript, nothing to talk about type performance. And I'm not going to sit there and, destroy him for it and all that. I mean, I've definitely laid laid it on him a little bit, but not overly. You know what I mean? Not overly, because I'm not gonna jump off this kid like he can't, perform at a high level. I think he has the capability. You just got to put it all together. I heard a rumor from a couple different sources now. Did he say it people were saying it, that he said he was sick in the press conference. I must have missed that. Maybe I cut it off a little. It was only like a 7 or 8 minute clip that I saw. I don't think maybe I turned it off or something came up when I was watching it. That's probably what it was. But sick or not, it just, I don't know. There's just so much movement, as if there wasn't much, as if it was a 12-round fight that you had won every round and you were just milking the last chunk of it. I can see that, but there's times where he's just like, dude, what are you doing, man? Just throw more punches. Mix up your combinations. Don't look just to counter and that's it, And I know, a lot of people, whether it's, within Top Rank, some of them are trying to spin it and say, look at that defense. And that's cool. I've never said the guy doesn't have a lot of skill. And maybe, he'll have to show it once a guy like Valdez, who is going to come at him, or a guy like Herring that's going to throw some meaningful punches every round. Maybe he just needs that. You know what I mean? Maybe he just needs that. But like I was saying, so, I hope it's Herring and then Valdez, like I mentioned. That's what I'm assuming, because it sounds like Oscar Valdez already has an opponent. So it makes sense to do that route. And hopefully Shakur is just talking about he don't want to fight Herring anymore. He wants to fight Valdez next. But why wait? Why wait? Because Valdez isn't fighting until September, something like that. So you're not going to wait and then have to wait for him to recoup and have another camp. And just stay active. You got to at least fight one more time this year. So yeah, wasn't really impressed, but not jumping on this kid like he's not shit or something like that. You know what I mean? Got a lot of skill, but he needs to kind of capture it in a bottle and use it all in fights. Sometimes, you need someone to bring that out of you. The undercard, though, Julian Rodriguez, the unbeaten prospect at the time, what was he, 21-0? Something like that, 13 or 15, something like that. Knockouts against Jose Pedraza, who's had this nice run in the second part of his career, especially at 140. I got to admit, I didn't necessarily see him having that much top 10 I didn't see him in the top 10 per se at 140. Not that now he's, he lost the fight recently, against a top 10 guy, top, 5 guy, Zapata. And there was a clear difference in that fight. But once again, these plus 125s, plus 145, plus 160, whatever, and more, plus 200s and beyond, like Figueroa and Nonito Donaire. And, this stuff has been happening here now. So it's been fun. It's been fun. And this was close to a 50-50 fight on paper, but once it got in the ring, it was clear as day, Jose Pedraza. A couple of decent lands early and late for Rodriguez. I actually gave him the first round. But after that, it was hard to give him a round, to be honest with you. Well, maybe one more round, like the fourth round or maybe the sixth round or something like that. There could have been some of that. It just seemed like Pedraza was landing the better shots. That right hand to the head, and then he'd switch it up and throw to the body. That was pretty meaningful punching right there. And by the second or third round, whatever happened to Rodriguez's eye, Andre Ward even pointed out there's his eyes, both of his eyes are starting to swell now. Clearly, one, his left eye was having just the cleaner punching, the cleaner shots, clean jab. Even like Pedraza was kind of doing his inside out stuff where he will come at you. but Rodriguez would be like, oh, here's a good punch, but not enough, that type of thing. There was some back and forth, don't get me wrong, but not enough, not nearly enough. In the 8th round, early off hand to the head and then to the body, he kept pressuring. Pedraza did more and more, and then didn't make it into, the 9th round. TKO, left eye, couldn't see out of it. Fight over. So Pedraza got a nice, solid win. Like I said, he's had a nice, his performance that he won a few rounds off of Lomachenko at 135 was good. It didn't seem like for a while Lomachenko could dominate him. He's always been a solid fighter. I mean, he was, people kind of forget, but he was the favorite. Like a 2.5 to 1, 3 to 1. It was a clean favorite. I don't exactly remember how it closed 100%, but over Gervonta Davis back, years ago now, a few years ago anyway. But good performance from him. I thought he looked, pretty damn solid. And, it just basically keeps him in line. It keeps him in line for some solid fights at 140. And who knows what's going to happen with the undisputed stuff and how many belts are going to come loose or just one belt or whatever. We don't know what Josh Taylor's going to do. Will he take on Teofimo Lopez? Will he go up? Would he go up to fight Terrence Crawford just for a fight and come back down, or would he stay up there? Because, the way Spence is talking, within a year, those belts will be loose. So I'm not sure exactly where he goes, but no matter what, it was a very clean, crisp, efficient Jose Pedraza in that ring that we saw on Saturday. Also on DAZN, Jeremias Ponce really pretty much handled Ritson. They basically threw the towel in. That's how it ended. Was it Dave Ritson? I think is his father. But there was some, there was a mean left hook that Ponce landed on Ritson. It was the first round, I believe. Left hand to the body, and he kept bringing pressure a lot of the fight. Now, Ritson, there was 2 or 3 uppercuts that he got hit with, Ritson, in the 3rd or 4th round. But then he came back, and he had, some nice body work. And so there was back and forth in the 4th and 5th. And there was plenty of, okay, this is going to be something here, But basically, Ritson started to go in such a defensive mode, and the combination punching took over, and was a clear win for Ponce. So that was a very good performance. We'll see where he goes next. But overall, pretty mild weekend, to be honest with you. Of course, there were some other undercard fights, and there were some knockouts and stuff, but it wasn't. There's not a whole lot to discuss as far as meaningful fights or whatever, or involving some meaningful contenders or champions. You know what I mean? So yeah, overall, pretty much a ho-hum card. Not much to talk about when it comes to that card and the other card with DAZN as well. I mean, like I said, that was an entertaining fight though on DAZN, but it was a mild weekend. It was a mild weekend, and this weekend we got coming up, and actually I see John on the line now. I'm going to go to him in just a moment here. We will preview this, quantity over quality type weekend. There is a term that's used in a lot of ways. I first heard it in acting and in filmmaking. Less is more. And that would not be a way I'd describe. I'd flip it this weekend. More is less in this one. This is quantity, not quality. Some of these undercard fights, like Adam Lopez, as I mentioned, and Isaac Dogbe, sign me up for that. Andy Benez against Jonah Carroll, sign me up for that. That's interesting. There's a interesting women's fight. Like Inoue, I always like watching him. He's in there with a no-hoper, but Michaela Meyer, is returning. Munguia, supposed to be in an interesting fight with Sulecki, but that folded. So, it's just it's one of these weekends where you're like, really, dude? All these? But then again, do we need these? I don't know. It's one way I'm like, why are we crowding one weekend so much, right? And it sucks most for the pay-per-view on Triller. Well, I guess it sucks for the Julio Cesar Chavez and Chavez Jr. going against Anderson Silva, too. We got 2 pay-per-views, but one of them is an exhibition pay-per-view. But on one hand, it's like, well, these type of fights, if we just mix it all on one weekend and just get them over with, I can look at it like that as a positive because we're going to get some good undercard fights rather than these spread out. No, this is going to be an individual weekend just for this mediocre main event. I don't know. I guess it's like, it's just weird, dude. It's just a weird weekend. It really is, man. Anyway, we'll get into some of that. Like I said, there is some rumors about a big PBC welterweight fight rematch for the fall. Hopefully they can get that done. Hopefully that's not just rumors. And then the Wilder Fury undercard heavyweight driven, which I think is pretty dope. It's a solid undercard, and they're going to have a presser tomorrow. And we'll also, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to try to make sense of this Triller Pass subscription, because when you look at the price point, even when you look at the yearly sub, right? Like the Zone yearly sub gave us what, $8.33 a month. That's damn good. Even doing that, it's $25 a month. We're gonna get into the price point, and also like, so does that mean? Because I remember them saying like anywhere from 4 to maybe 5 or 6 pay-per-views a year. So let's just say 6, right? That's every other weekend or every other month. That's still, you're just breaking even then with the pay-per-views then. It just, and I understand like 3 songs of Justin Bieber are archives chilling waiting for me. Or isn't it supposed to be J-Lo this weekend? I understand there's some value there, but I mean, it's not value to me. Because people are already paying a subscription for unlimited, besides Jay-Z, unlimited music, right? So a lot of people are already paying a decent amount per month for music. So, and if I'm going to watch, like, watching music live beats it, period, right? So, like, there are some groups and bands and genres and whatever, pretty good live. Great live sometimes, right? It's not. I'm not just talking about like rock and instrumental music where there's a whole band and stuff like that. There are, like I mentioned, I mean, they had a couple of them that, they put on a performance. So, but I just don't, we don't know the schedule. We know Oscar De La Hoya is going to fight somebody. He's trying to call out Canelo. We know Holyfield's going to fight somebody in an exhibition. But they want me to sub up for a year when I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, dude. It's weird. Wait till we get into the price points and all that. It just doesn't line up. But yeah, there's more current fight news and all that good stuff. Tiafimo reworking the deal. So we'll go through all this. Long story short, let's bring in John, a great boxing mind, and see what's going on with him. What's going on, John? How you doing, man?
Hey, Chris. Great to be here as always. And I like the way you put it about this upcoming weekend. I think is we've got a lot of quantity over quality coming up this weekend.
Man, I mean, it really is just like, wow, okay. I mean, these things are happening. I guess it's on the schedule. If I'm reading it correctly, this is on the schedule. It is what it is. Before we get into some of that stuff, we will be talking about the Kings, having to do with the Four Kings Showtime documentary. Not just the documentary itself, but John and I, more older gentlemen than a lot of people, let's say on boxing Twitter, we lived through some of that stuff too. So we're going to talk about it, what it meant to us just in general too. So we're going to have that segment to close it out, but to close out John's segment, I should say. Shakur Stevenson was in the ring this weekend. So was Jose Pedraza. Hoping Herring and then Valdez is next. He's getting a lot of critical, attention here off of his performance. Some of it is his own doing, both with his performance, John, and him talking about he's in the same cloth of Sugar Ray Leonard and Mayweather, and then they're doing this big promo before, which doesn't really help stuff because, if it's a dud performance, then you're like, this is the guy that they're saying is Floyd Mayweather? Like, people are going to get turned off by that, casuals anyway. What was your thoughts on Stevenson? And it's not like he did a ton wrong, but these last three fights, he's just kind of left something, not just something, but a fair amount on the table. He's kind of picking at his food. He's not finishing his plate.
Yeah, I think, he's a young guy, only 23. I got to admit, I've got a soft spot for him myself because he's from New Jersey, like I am. But that said, I think the criticism here was warranted. I mean, the fight was painfully boring. And while Stevenson was saying, I was worried about this guy Nakatali's right hand. I mean, the guy hadn't faced any kind of formidable opposition. He wasn't, this is what's good when you have Transnational doing rankings and the ring's still around. I mean, you don't have to go by this alphabet stuff. I mean, if you're having trouble getting a bead on the guy, at least look at it and see, is he ranked by the ring or Transnational? And, they both rank, and I'm on Transnational, 17 weight classes, which I personally don't even feel is necessary. I don't think we need more than probably 9. But with that said, if you've got independent, and Transnational certainly independent, you got independent organizations ranking 17 weight classes, and the guy's not ranked, and that was the case here. I mean, that's a good rule of thumb, and it doesn't mean every ranked guy is always that formidable, but when they're not ranked, I mean, what really was the concern here? You're fighting as an ESPN headliner, big opportunity to market yourself. And, people then will use the example, sometimes Floyd Mayweather had some performances that weren't that entertaining, or Pernell Whitaker. And, there might be some truth to that. But I was thinking about that issue a little bit over the last couple of days. And, let's face it, Chris, as you've said, we were talking about the Four Kings part, you and I have been around a little longer and seen more stuff. Even in the Floyd Mayweather era when he was an Olympian, Olympic boxing was bigger. Certainly it was huge when Pernell, was a U.S. Olympian. Those fights were all in prime time. Even the trials were on in prime time in '84. And, you had Pernell Whitaker and the other gold medalists in '84 made their pro debuts on national TV on ABC. Why I say all that?
Yeah, a bunch of them on one card. That was awesome.
That was. And why I'm saying that with Shakur Stevenson is he's an Olympic silver medalist, but Olympic boxing isn't getting the exposure, like it was in past decades. And, it's not the same. So what I'm pointing out here is he doesn't have the base of a Pernell Whitaker or even a Floyd Mayweather to fall back on. So, I think when he gets an ESPN opportunity, he needs it more than those guys in the past, even because he hasn't had that kind of exposure, and to just stink it out like that against the guy you're a huge favorite against. And to Shakur's credit, I mean, I retweeted it. He tweeted it out moments after the fight. He wasn't happy with what he did himself. Now, that's from the entertainment perspective, and from the in-ring perspective, there has been moments even since Shakur Stevenson turned pro, in his first couple of fights even, where there has been moments where the power has seemed a bit lacking. Now, what we're going to have to see how it plays out is if you look at some modern punch stat type analytical data, and frankly, some of the type that matters. I mean, he's just he's just not getting hit. And, he is hitting his opponent. So he has that in his favor. But what we can say is at the least, nights like Saturday night are just not making it from an entertainment perspective. I mean, and I think that, a fight with Herring, I don't even think Herring can press him enough personally. I think, Herring could maybe make it close, but I could see, Shakur kind of stinking that one out too and beating him easily, because despite what just happened with Frampton, Herring's not a power puncher. He's not a threat like that. So, and he's a guy in his mid-30s. So I actually do personally think it would take a Valdez, somebody of that skill level who brings some power to maybe bring out this Shakur Stevenson that people are thinking he's going to have to be challenged before we see that. And we might get that then, because if you have a guy with enough talent and enough power threat to put pressure on him and make him do more, then maybe some of that's going to come out. Or if you're kind of down on Shakur Stevenson, like I said, from the beginning of his career, there have been performances where the power seemed to be lacking. So I hope he just needs to be pressed, because, there does seem to be star potential there, but the thing that might be up in the air is just those moments that we've had like Saturday night where the power did not seem to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And he's shown us plenty, as you mentioned too, of even those right hand, counters and all that. He's definitely shown us plenty of skill. And so I'm definitely not jumping off the bandwagon or something like that, or going to dump on this kid to the extent where you see on Boxing Twitter and some other folks. But, yeah, we're going to see, what Herring and Valdez has for him and see how he performs. Jose Pedraza looked pretty damn good against Rodriguez, who this was close to a 50-50 on paper.
Yeah, Rodriguez ended up even moving to a slight favorite from an opening that was about 50-50. And another Jersey guy had a soft spot for him, from Bergen County, New Jersey. But, I got to say, I was really disappointed in, Julian Rodriguez. He just, I think, I thought this was, full disclosure, I thought he was in position for this to be a breakout performance. And then I started to hedge my bets a little bit when I saw him come in overweight. But I was hopeful that, that wasn't from lack of preparedness. But, when I looked at that fight, watching it, he didn't quite seem to have the same snap. He seemed to, swell up quickly. And, he didn't seem to have quite the same snapping his punches, and he ended up swelling up enough, as we know, that he got stopped. And I've got to say, of course, that's completely on him, but he's a young fighter, even though he is in the mid-20s at this point. But people make mistakes, and this might be a case where the guy in his first test, anxiety can come up, even when you're a fighter, and all kinds of apprehensions. And sometimes people respond, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they make a mistake and respond the next time. But I think he just didn't respond to this moment in the preparedness for whatever reason. And, coming in 1.4 over, and if you saw, there was some good addition by the commentary team, at least as the fight was getting ready to go. I think Tessitore had mentioned that, because you didn't hear it that much right before the fight then, that I guess they wanted him to weigh in again the day of the fight, and he wouldn't even do it. So, look, I'm not a physician. I'm not a physician, but enough about the human body and your own athletic experiences and following the sport that it's just, even if sometimes people look at the weight advantage, there's other things that go against you. Like I'm just going to make up a number, but when they're talking like they were, it's probably not out of the ballpark. If he was 161 pounds or something like that when he went in there, that's still not necessarily good if you're putting on, 20 pounds, or almost 20 pounds in a day or two. It's just not good for you. And I think you could compare it to certain sports, like, frankly, even if you go to, track and field or, running a marathon. You don't you do different sport, but still you don't put on too much weight. You know what I mean? It's like carrying a bowling ball. And I think, if you have even a certain frame, even if you're a lower weight fighter, at some point there's an advantage, but it's a fine line. And, if the guy was already not in great condition and then, the day of the fight, he's at like 160 pounds or something like that, because he didn't have the snap. But with all that said, let me also add, I think there was a little bit of a misconception. I agree with you, Chris. When you watch the fight, and I do agree with the judges. I mean, I think myself, I thought even if Pedraza looked good, and he is a good, solid fighter, as you said, I think 2 points down on the cards was realistic. And why I mention that is, look, that's Julian Rodriguez, that his own fault, but at whatever percentage he was, not 100% of what he's capable of, he was in the fight. Even though Pedraza had a lot of real good moments and busted him up, he was very reliant on the jab. In other words, he had moments where he was opening up a little more with the power, and he performed very well. But, he was jabbing. He had a lot of caution there. I think, a properly prepared Rodriguez, the fight was there. This was a missed opportunity. And, it's going to be a question and take too much of a beating. Can he learn from this, come back with anything? And then on the plus side, Pedraza was very well prepared, performed very well. And, he's right on the cusp of legit top 10 at 140. So, I think maybe with politics, I mean, he's with Top Rank and Josh Taylor in the U.S. is with Top Rank.
Right.
So that provides opportunity for him that, maybe somebody else at 140 doesn't have. So, I mean, I think if he was maybe with a promoter that had even more at 140 or in that type of a promotional situation, maybe you wouldn't say he's going to go right to a big fight, but maybe he's not far away with Top Rank having Taylor, and of course they've got Ramirez. So there might be if Teofimo Lopez moves up. I mean, he with Top Rank, he's in a pretty good position for a good payday. Yeah,
definitely. Now, as far as this weekend goes, we already talked about how it's, there are some undercard fights that I'm looking forward to watch and whatnot. Do you think George Kambosos, who, there is his last fight with Lee Selby, I think it was like a split decision, but he won it. And now Selby was probably best at 126. He did jump up the lightweight probably too quick. And then I think he fought Mickey Bay and beat him in a split decision. I guess that's enough, as we know. And I'm not trying to single out Kambosos here because plenty of guys get, mandatory shots for even less than that. So I'm definitely not trying to dump on him. He's a good talker, John, this Kambosos, and they've been hyping this thing up, and Triller's been trying to push it anyway. I haven't seen an ad just yet, especially like on YouTube, which I'd assume is going to happen here. But, what's this card do for you? We could talk a little bit about the main event. Michael Hunter is taking on Mike Wilson. I mentioned Andy Venez against Jonah Carroll. That's a 10-rounder. I think there's some interesting stuff right in that fight. Charles Conwell, upcoming prospect at 154 fights. So there is something there. There's not about it. Cruz Dezern, Dezern, I think it is. She, it's for the undisputed super middleweight, title. So there's something on here, but where do you think Kambosos can be competitive in this fight? Because that's kind of what I'm hoping this weekend, John, that some of these B-sides, clear B-sides, are going to be competitive. So at least maybe we get a knockout, but moments of two-way before that. What do you think of this card in general?
I'll go with the main event first, Chris, and I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit because I think people, I already have been doing it, but I sense actually I'm in the minority here. So, it's the old thing. Somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong. I think Kambosos is overmatched here. I think a lot of Teofimo Lopez, and I'm starting to, and I think it's been a good thing, like we just talked about the Julian Rodriguez example, assuming Teofimo Lopez doesn't have any trouble making the weight, and he's in good shape.
That's
I always got to give that as a qualifier because, I don't want to be saying this stuff and then we're sitting here on Friday and Teofimo Lopez,
right,
weighing at 138 or something like that. Because those things do happen. And then, then for me, and probably literally, it's got to be all bets are off. But my opinion here, based on an in-shape, prepared Teofimo Lopez, let's say at least as prepared as he was for Comey. Comey. I think that he should take Kambosos out easily. And why I say that is, one, how good I think Teofimo Lopez is, because I think he's a guy who has boxing skills, speed, and power. So that makes him a very, very difficult guy to deal with, as you saw the trouble Lomachenko had dealing with him. Because let's face it, when Lomachenko didn't throw any punches in the first 6 rounds, it's part on him because he's being cautious, but it's part also because he sees what's in front of him and he sees how dangerous Teofimo Lopez is. And, we know how much talent Lomachenko has. So, it's part because of Lopez that Lomachenko's not letting his hands go for 6 rounds. He sees the danger. So I saw Kambosos against Selby, and boy, I almost never, and I'm a little bit in the minority here too, but again, this is how I felt watching the fight. I almost never agree with the British commentators. You get a lot of bias there. And, of course, Selby was the British guy in the fight, Kambosos Australian, but I thought Selby did enough to edge it out. I mean, it was close.
It could have been a draw,
give it to
no doubt.
Yeah, I thought that
2
was
of those
like
cards,
a draw. And,
I believe it's 2 of those cards is really bad. I think one of them was like 118, 110 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and Selby can't punch. He wasn't a big puncher as a featherweight, and he's up at lightweight. So, I mean, Kambosos wasn't terrible or anything, but, that and then, a close fight with Mickey Bay. I agree with you. There's mandatories so bad out there that Kambosos being undefeated with those 2 wins, yes, that is better than a lot of these horrible alphabet mandatories. And, he is number 10 in transnational. Just me personally, on my thoughts and my votes on the ranking, he wouldn't crack it. And again, we have consensus, and the consensus works well a lot of times. So he's at 10, but even there, only 10. So, I mean, to me, he's a guy on the bubble there. I just think a prepared Lopez should highlight reel him. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Kind of an example I would look at. I mean, and really, I'm not trying to knock Kambosos because early in his career, Menard did get knocked out by a guy who had a losing record, but then he went on a great run. Had some highlight reel KO guys on the fringe. Failed against Beltran, then on a bigger step up. But then that's when he got blown out and won, highlight reeled by Teofimo Lopez. Just my own opinion is, Menard does have some speed and power. I mean, is this is to me, is Kambosos, that different than a Mason Menard? To me, he's not. Now, like I said, we'll see if I get proven wrong. Right, exactly. I think it doesn't mean Kambosos is going out in a round, but to me, a prepared Teofimo Lopez should get him out. So with all the other and I, again, just for pure entertainment value, I thought that we've talked about it before. I thought the Jake Paul Askren thriller, that was their second. Myself, I thought it was kind of funny and entertaining. I didn't regret. I only did it the last second. I was thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this. But on that one, I didn't regret throwing out $49.99. But I just don't, on talking to the fans, I don't see this being a $49.99 as much as I think of Lopez. I mean, I think he blows out Kambosos. I mean, the rest of the card, I like Michael Hunter. He's a legit top 10 heavyweight. He's an American heavyweight that, you know, maybe deserves a little more attention. I don't blame Michael Hunter for signing with Triller and trying to maybe see if he can find a path to build himself up. I mean, I think he's a guy that's kind of good and gotten savvy at trying to build himself up, and I think he's going to keep at that and maybe do that. But I don't blame him for doing
WBA is
it,
a clean route. It's the cleanest route to a secondary belt, that's for sure.
Right, and he's put himself on it, and then he might get there. But you know, he's in a mismatch. I mean, this is just a guy that I don't blame Michael Hunter for going with Triller here, but it's a mismatch. I love what I see at Conwell. He reminds me a little bit of a Dwight Muhammad Cowie in the best sense. You know, even though he's a little bit lower of a weight. But again, you know, I don't think he's in with a guy that's really competitive with him. I mean, you know, a guy like Vences has seen better days. I mean, John O'Carroll normally has no power, but then he took out Quigg. Looked good doing it too, but you know, I mean, I just don't know that's a fight of anybody going anywhere. So I think Triller I mean, you could argue they misfired on the whole thing, but when they moved the date away from the Mayweather weekend, that might have had some good reasoning, but to just plop it in the weekend full of other boxing that, like you said, people are already subscribed to some channels, or you've got the ESPN basic cable option. I mean, I think this thing's going to be a disaster. And then trying to go mainstream, like, and I actually like Jim Lampley as a commentator. When I've had this criticism, it's not because I don't like Lampley, but still, with what Triller's trying to do, I mean, bringing in Jim Lampley and trying to make it look legitimate, like appealing to old boxing fans, when Triller had this unique thing for the first two shows, it's just bizarre to me. It's actually whacked. I mean, I don't get it. I just don't. And when you don't get it, you know, most of the time it's headed for disaster. So I don't even know what the strategy is here.
Right, and you know, someone just messaged me, I'm wrong about Jennifer Lopez. I shouldn't say booked, but they had billed her as if she's going to be there, and maybe she was only free on that June 5th date, but she's not performing. And I've heard Tiafimo say J-Lo and all that, but I'm wrong. I actually have the list here. It says music performances by Mike Towers, Meek Mill. A lot of people know Meek Mill, of course.
Right.
And a couple other guys. The hosted by Mario Lopez and Snoop Dogg, with the commentator, like you said, Jim Lampley. So I was actually wrong. They don't got J-Lo anymore. But here's the thing, and we're going to get to some of the other stuff, but it's not like we're breaking down many fights, right, John, when it comes to these fights anyway. So we might as well talk around the edges here, but make this make sense, which even in your great boxing / lawyer mind, I don't think you're going to be able to do it here, John. $29.99 a month, okay? So that means you get
I'm already laughing.
You get boxing. So they want a sub. And we poked a little bit at DAZN to go up $20 a month, which had them at the highest rate, for a casual fan, because we know, like you and I and people that listen to the show, we're going to pay the hundo and get the $833, and we're going to be happy about it.
Right.
But even if you pay the $300, you're looking at like $25 a month still. So $29.99 a month. If you did 6 pay-per-views, you're still paying $60 for the pay-per-view. Like, it's still they're still getting your money. So maybe you save $10 by doing the yearly subscription, but because they've now jumped it. And another thing you don't see from the usual suspects, John, talking about a $10. I don't see boxing Twitter full of polls. Are you going to buy the pay-per-view now that it's not 50 and it's 60? I don't see those polls right now, unless they're done in like sarcasm, which I have seen. One of them was pretty funny or whatever. But $30 a month to sub, for boxing and the entertainment. I understand like 3 songs from Doja Cat and Bieber and in this type of whatever.
Right.
That's there, so
right.
You can watch it. But it goes back to that you're already paying for unlimited music. Most people want to see, live music live, $30 a month. If they did 6 pay-per-views, so we're going to pay, and even to do a $25 a month, we're going to pay $300 straight up when they don't even have an announced next pay-per-view. And the ones that they talk about are Oscar De La Hoya and then a Holyfield pay-per-view. Both of them exhibitions. What is this just a money grab? Let's try to get up as much upfront money as we can get, because now they're also talking about the music's not going to slow down the card. Well, when the hell are they going to play then? When are they going to perform, I should say? Where are we going to fit in Meek Mill? Is that later? Is that after the fight? This is just completely opposite from what they started, like you mentioned, and it was supposed to draw the youth. And now they're just putting in a standard HBO mediocre card from 2006 when they had 12 pay-per-views a year, and this has just got that feeling. I mean, what the $30 a month, John?
I agree, Chris. You go back when boxing, I think they're rebounding from some of that now. When it got off track, it was like during that time, like you're saying, like mid-2000s when HBO just started running too many pay-per-views, and then the regular HBO fights were getting too mediocre. I mean, that's not your model. Like when they bring in Jim Lampley and then you got Kambosos, to me, again, we're going to find out who's right, who's wrong, but to me, a bad alphabet mandatory challenger, even though he might be better than some of them, still a bad one to me. And then you're going to make that pay-per-view, and then, even the last one, I mean, you do have to talk part about the entertainment music value. I mean, with some of the other wacky stuff they had in that was entertaining, and you had Doja Cat and Bieber in there, and, Sauty, and, some popular current acts.
Slap boxing, a little slap boxing too, the slapping the face competition.
Yeah, I mean, and then this I just don't know what they're doing with this. And you make a good point. I was real critical of DAZN and what they're trying to do, and I still don't think they're getting really good exposure for the fighters. But where they tone down my criticism a bit is just what you said. The $100 for the hardcore fan, and they have, to their credit, they have stayed with it. I thought they'd drop it, but they haven't. So I got to give them that. I mean, it's not bad, $833 a month, because I think you do have to start talking subscriptions. I mean, I've got Sirius XM, I've got, Apple Music, then, you got DAZN, you got ESPN Plus. I mean, we're all going to have a limit. I mean, how many of these things are we supposed to subscribe to? I mean, what's Triller giving me? I mean, I got Apple, right? I got Apple Music, and it's gotta be something that gets you entertained enough. I mean, Lopez Kambosos, and then other fights that are not close odds wise. And you got a bunch of other boxing on the same day. I mean, if they were, I don't even think it wouldn't work anyway. But like, if they
these
were
aren't
only
exhibitions,
going,
right? These aren't exhibitions with names, right?
Right. They're not exhibitions with names, and I don't like the exhibitions. See, you and I both agree on that. I mean, some people don't care.
Right.
I don't like the exhibitions. So, I mean, that's the thing. This is just me talking. I mean, Jake Paul and Aspen wasn't an exhibition. Now, some people don't want that, but to me, okay, it's a fight. Just like we talked last week when Woodley fights Jake Paul. I mean, everybody's got their own taste. I'm a hardcore fan and follower and commentator, but I'll still, if something draws me entertainment value, I'll still get it. I just, the Mayweather Logan Paul for me was just, and you agreed on that, exhibition. That's what just kind of, if it was again, some people feel the exact opposite, but for me, if it was a real fight and I had to see how Floyd Mayweather was going to navigate this big guy in a real fight, I might buy that. It's not
right.
even
and we knew he was training every day. He told us he's taking breaks in his training not to get hurt.
Right.
I mean,
Right. Yeah, just to see what he would do. See what he would do. I mean, me personally, sometimes that unique aspect where it's strange enough that it has an attraction, and sometimes that can be the good part of boxing when it's not regulated and you can have these odd things happen. But I just don't see what Saturday night on Triller, what that does, even though I like Lopez, I like Hunter, I like Conwell, but just, again, they're not like, it's not like they've put out all this money to have these like even money fights with big names. So you just see things like this, and it just, I don't get what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, man, and there's also from Guadalajara an integrated sports. This is supposed to be an integrated sports $29.99 pay-per-view is what it's supposed to be, John. This Triller thing from Puerto Rico or something, or from Panama maybe, or Honduras or something like that, where it's like, okay, bring, is he from Panama? Is that where Teofimo's originally, his heritage comes from? Am I wrong with that, or is it Honduras?
He is American with the Honduran heritage.
Honduras. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I bring up integrated sports. Go ahead.
Yeah, he did win the Olympic trials, U.S. Olympic trials, and then changed from the old way they used to do it. He didn't get the Olympic spot, so that's why he fought for Honduras. Right. He actually won the U.S. trials, but they gave it to Balderas because he had fought in the WSB. So so he, but his dad, I guess, is, the heritage is Honduran.
Okay, so that kind of makes, I bring up the integrated sports pay-per-view because Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. and Hector Camacho Jr. in a 6-round exhibition. Chavez Jr. taking on Anderson Silva in an 8-rounder, which is crazy that no one's even talking about that, mostly off of Chavez Jr.'s last couple of fights. So that's that. Another exhibition on pay-per-view, which I think is cheaper or whatever. But then we have Inoue returning, and, Michaela Mayer in a fight there that could be interesting. Adam Lopez and Isaac Dogbo in the long run doesn't do much for us, but it is kind of a crossroads fight, so I think, that could be entertaining. I'm cool with that. But, the main event, Inoue is going to blow this dude away. Not much with this ESPN, but any comments on the ESPN before we get to the Showtime one as well?
Yeah, since everybody's competing here, and when they come up, like you mentioned earlier, Chris, people tend to forget this. When they all do come on the same date like that, a lot of times they pretend it's accidental, but it's really not. In other words, let's face it, they are competitors. In other words, and as fans, we'd like to see them not conflict, but in their minds, they don't like to admit this straight out, but, they're saying, okay, I think I can beat the competitor's product this night, based on what platform I'm on or who I've got fighting or whatever the case may be. So, it's really not accidental. So why I mention that is, that's where then, Top Rank comes in with a show and it's on basic cable, so that always gives you an advantage, because you've even got more subscribers than Showtime. You've got many more than DAZN subscriptions, and you've certainly got a big edge on a Triller, pay-per-view. So ESPN, again, knowing what their competition is going to be, thinking, well, with what we're going to spend on what we put out there, we think we're going to draw more people than who we're up against. And, odds are good that they're going to be able, and actually they will do that. And that's the thing with competition. So, Top Rank and ESPN are saying, we're going to throw this out there. This is not our best stuff, but it's going to be on basic cable, and we're going to outdraw everybody else. So, they know what they're doing there. Inoue's in with a no-hoper. I don't like that. I think, and you get these fans, and especially these hipster types. And look, I'm a believer in Inoue's talent, and his victory over Donaire just aged better with Donaire's performance. But with all that understood, some of his opposition, frankly, has been overrated. And, it's been moving around in the weight classes some. Yeah, and a lot of that then is because of the WBSS stuff. You've got people who are fans of that who think just if somebody was in that means automatically, every fight was brutal competition. And, even if the guy had an alphabet belt or something like that, that's not, it's not always it's not always the case. So, you know what? I mean, why I'm just saying all that is this is not a good opponent here. You know, he's coming off a easy KO over Maloney. I mean, you know, Maloney's okay. I mean, you know, he's not bad. He's not, you know, even though he ranked in the division. So he, you know, would like to see him in something better. This shouldn't be any problem. You know, it's interesting you mentioned Lopez and Dogbe, because when you really go through all this quantity we have, that probably I'll put my money on in terms of competitiveness. That's probably the best fight of the day. I would say.
I'd agree. I'd agree with that.
And that's on
paper anyway.
About that. Right, and you know, I like watching Michaela Mayer fight. I mean, I think she really can fight. I think we're way past the time of getting rid of this 2-minute rounds for the women. You know, I think that's discriminatory and it's sexist. There's just no rational basis for it. It's got to go. So I hate that when, you know, we are getting women in some headlining positions or co-feature positions, but, you know, ESPN's good exposure. You know, let's have 3-minute rounds. I mean, let's stop this nonsense. You know, we're in the United States of America here. I mean, it just shouldn't be happening. I mean, we know better than that. It shouldn't be happening. So, you know, wouldn't have me not enjoy watching Michaela Mayer fight, because I like her abilities. I think she's got talent and she's a good story. But we need to get rid of those 2-minute rounds. So out of those 3 fights, I like watching Inoue. I like watching Michaela Mayer, but you know, you don't have the opponents there in those 2 fights. The Dogbe Lopez fight is a real good one. You know, Lopez is trained by Buddy McGirt too. He's always got a good game plan, has his fighters ready. I like seeing what he does. I mean, I think that's a real good fight, and I think that's a fight that, fighting at his best, has got a chance to pull that one off. So I do like that fight on that card.
That's a good way to open up the broadcast. It might be able to keep some viewership that way too. DAZN Munguia is taking on a guy that Golovkin waxed not long ago, Gabriel Rosado, who looked good against Danny Jacobs, relatively speaking anyway, is taking on a prospect. There are some other prospects, Blair Cobbs and Brad Sullivan and such. What do you take out of that card?
You know, I've been a fan of Munguia more than a lot of people. You know, as he's been in the spotlight more, a lot more people seem down on him than high on him. I basically liked him. You know, I don't like to have these too much, but I think on this one I'm going to say, you know, Sharameda looked so bad against Golovkin, even though, you know, I mean, Golovkin's power has always been for real, even if you look at the stats of his fights, you know, even disregarding who some of his opposition was at times, you know, the number of fights that he scored knockouts or not career, that's legit, and it shows you what kind of a chin Canelo has, too, which Canelo, as good as he is, and he gets credit for it, the guy actually doesn't even get enough credit for his chin, because, you know, he then went 24 with Golovkin and didn't even go down. But why I mention that is, you know, Sharameda was in trouble against Golovkin like every moment, and, you know, I don't even know how he lasted as long as he did, but he was awful in that fight. So, you know, from the way it appeared. So what I'm getting to here is, you know, Munguia is a younger guy than Golovkin, but he is also a power puncher. This would be one of those fights to me, like, you know, you don't like this to be why you're watching a fight. You want a competitive fight. But the thing that I'm just a hair curious about in this one is, you know, Munguia being a young guy who's also a power puncher, you know, from what we saw of Sharameda against Golovkin, the statement to make here would be to just run this guy out of there in a round or two. I would hope that he realized, and the guy's coming in on short notice too. So no reason really, if Munguia is what I think he is and can be, which is probably more than most. You know, I've been a little higher on him than most. But I've learned too, in my older age, you've got to adjust what you see. You've got to adjust on what you actually see. So I guess what I'm saying here is, you know, if Sharameda, you know, goes, you know, 12 rounds with Munguia, or goes late in the fight, or is real competitive after getting annihilated by a 39-year-old Golovkin, I mean, that's not good for Munguia. On the other side of the coin, if Munguia runs this guy out of there in a round or two, which I think he should, then at least he's starting to make a statement like, hey, the torch is passing here. I'm ready for Golovkin. Because DAZN could easily make that fight. I mean, I only assume with Golovkin because I think it's been somewhat of the pattern that he and business-wise you can't blame him. I mean, the payday is with Canelo. So even if it's at 168 pounds and he's 40 years old, that's the final payday. So, I mean, if Munguia is even too much of a risk at this point that they don't want to take waiting on Canelo, it's not going to happen because I just look at that fight and it's like, well, they're both middleweights. They're both DAZN. We're waiting. Golovkin just fought Sharameta. Munguia's fighting Sharameta. The guy was not impressive. I mean, let's get that on or something. But I think all I can try to take out of this one is, again, can Munguia make a statement against Sharameta that maybe trumps Golovkin since they're fighting the guy back to back? And it's on the other side of the coin, it's if he has trouble with this guy and it's competitive or Sharameta takes him the distance, then I've got to myself start looking at Munguia and saying, maybe this guy just isn't as good as I thought he was.
And I will say he has improved. There's no doubt about that. We'll see where it – and another thing is it was going to be Sulecki, which would have been an upgrade in an opponent, especially where Munguia is and who he's faced at middleweight. I think that would have been a better fight. But, it is what it is. Moving on to the Showtime card, Jermall Charlo faces power-punching Montiel. Speaking of Munguia, a lot of people are not happy with this fight either, like a lot of these main events, because Munguia stopped Montiel like in the second or third round a while back. Now, we should preference it. That was at welterweight, and clearly Montiel didn't belong at that weight, and he's looked better since there. Like a lot of these fights in the main event, I'm hoping this is just a fun little exchange and then a knockout. So at least, the one thing I'll say is Montiel's going in there with something, to accomplish or whatever. He does have power, but still, it is a mismatch. And then Isaac Cruz and Francisco Vargas, who I thought should have been retired a while ago. I know he's had some time off. He hasn't been in as many wars lately, but still, Angelo Leo coming off his first loss over Aaron Almeida, who, is actually a pretty good, that's a decent fight. And then I think they just added Michael Angeletti, a 4-rounder. So I think it's going to be a quadruple header, if I'm not mistaken, but it's just a 4-rounder against Luis Javier Valdez. What do you think about this Showtime card? What do you think about Montiel? Because it's of late, it looks like it may be a fun action fight than a knockout, but a lot of people are pointing to that Munguia knockout.
Yeah, here's the thing. You don't want to seem to be overhyping something or being unrealistic about it. So you have to say, when the fight was signed, on paper for anybody looking at it, and you look, the odds makers know what they're doing. I mean, it's a mismatch according to the odds makers, and they're the best independent authority on that because their money's on the line. They can't let the biases take over. They've got to call it like it is. So I always look at that to set myself right. Others are saying it's a mismatch. So with that understood, though, I liked the way Montiel was looking because he's got size and he's got power. And normally when you're taking a guy on as just an opponent or kind of a no-hoper or, staying busy, as people call it nowadays, usually, most matchmakers, when they're protecting the A-side guy, don't want somebody with power in there because, boxing is the one sport where the guy lands something, he's got power, it changes. It doesn't matter if he's losing the fight. It doesn't matter if he's been in trouble. He can win the fight with one shot that leads to, a barrage and then a stoppage. So Montiel's got size and power, and I like the way he's been looking. Centeno, even though Jamal Charlo did blow him out, he's a competent fighter. Had talent, a bit of a disappointment, but the guy has some skills. Montiel had a draw with him. We know it was a washed-up James Kirkland who'd been off, but still, one round, he got him out of there. I mean, he had him hurt as soon as he hit him. I mean, even something that worked out like that, there's still something impressive because the odds makers did have that fight. I believe Kirkland was a slight favorite in that fight.
Yeah, he was slight, if I remember correctly.
He's slight favorite, so, we know how it came out, but, and there were some people saying, hey, you got to watch for Montiel pulling the upset on Kirkland here. I got to give them credit because there were a few people saying it pre-fight. But still, Kirkland was a slight favorite. Montiel just blasted him out of there. He's got the Munguia loss, like you're saying, and a lot of people are saying, but he's a young guy too. And that's the other thing, I think, when A sides are matched up more dangerously. I look at, for the potential for danger, I look at things that Montiel has: size, power, and youth. Because if a guy's older and washed up or past his best, the chances at the upset are lower too. But a guy who can still improve, who could still be getting better, who still has youth on his side, are more dangerous to me. So, and you've seen some of those types of upsets on some of those matchroom cards with, some of the opponents Eddie Hearns brought over there. They fit that criteria. And, Montiel's Mexican, but I'm not even just saying because they're Mexican. You just saw it with Ponce against Ritson that you were talking about earlier. You got a younger guy who's got some size for the weight class, some pop, and those are some guys with some upset potential. And Montiel fits that. Now,
so John just dropped. He's got time to call back. I'm sure he's going to pop back in here. He's kind of been in and out. You guys kind of notice he's been a little in and out in his reception, so I'm sure he'll pop back in here real quick. Because I don't think he was in a car or anything like that, so I don't think he's in an area where it just, blocked him. So there we go. I see him pop in. All right, let's bring him back in. Go ahead, John.
I think I lost you for a second.
I hit something.
You lost you for a second, but where I was left off was just wrap up that thought was, Jamal Charlo, I think, is an underrated fighter. I mean, he's got power. He's got skill. He always seems to be well prepared for his fights. Nothing has indicated anything to the contrary that we've seen in the past. So you would think that him being well prepared, and then with his level of experience and talent, that he'll have too much for Montiel. But again, Montiel's bringing power. He's bringing youth. He's bringing size. So as far as opponents go, it doesn't mean I was saying that's who I wanted for Jamal Charlo, but I don't think it's rationalizing for Showtime or PBC to say if it's gonna be an opponent type, at least it's an opponent type that's a little more interesting.
Yeah, I think so. And this fight coming off of, if you've come off a solid performance and a solid fight like Jamal has against Derevchenko, didn't knock him down but beat him cleaner than a lot of these other guys did. I'm willing to, get him in the ring. If you look at who Benavidez is fighting, who seems to be faded now, not Benavidez, but his opponent, maybe there's a collision course there. Daniel Jacobs was talking about going back to 60 and taking on Charlo. So it does kind of feel like they're ramping him up. Bigger fight later in the year. So let's hope that's the case, when it comes to that. Any other items before we start to maybe talk about, what these four kings meant to us? I definitely want to hear your take on this segment in general. But anything else stand out to you for the weekend or anything else like that?
Yeah, I just think one thing I wanted to touch on, because I haven't got a chance to touch on it yet. And, admittedly, a guy, one of my favorite fighters to watch, and I think if you looked at his whole career, had more all-around talent than people gave him credit for, but just had, really a bad loss, Jarrett Hurd. Hate to see it, but, as I was saying a little bit before, the more I watch boxing and, frankly, just all things in life, I like to study the science of predicting and having, good opinions, which all of us are wrong at times, and we can be right. And, if you're right more than wrong, you're actually doing pretty good. But why I'm getting to that is, you can stick with one opinion for a long time, and every once in a while you're going to be spectacularly right because you stuck with it and nobody else was saying it. But if you rigidly stick to it, also going to be wrong a ton. So what you learn as you get older, and people that get better at predicting things, is you kind of got to, it may seem like common sense, but a lot of times we don't do it. You get biases. Like I said, you get stubborn, you get denial. You got to adjust on what you see. And what I'm just saying is, been real high on Jarrett Hurd. Don't think I was wrong about that, but what I think I have to adjust on what I see is, that fight with, J-Rock Williams was a war. He had as some people have pointed out, which is true too, his fight with Lara before that was the fight of the year. Lara's got underrated pop, when he's landing on, and really wants to set on his punches. Looks to me now, after that Arias fight, and you had the Julian Williams fight, and he didn't look good against Santana, who was pretty much a washed-up guy. It looks like at age 30, Jarrett Hurd might be on the wrong side of the hill at this point. I think that would make sense. And what it made me then reevaluate as well is that war between Julian Williams and Jarrett Hurd was such a war. To me, that was fight of the year. I personally thought that was a better fight than, in a way, Donaire, say what you will, but I thought it at the time. I still think it. I think those guys, Williams getting blown away by Rosario after that, those guys might have taken a lot out of each other in that fight. And we'll see. Julian Williams has got a fight against a lesser opponent coming up, but maybe you don't hope it for him, but maybe we'll have to look at that fight and just see if he looks a little faded as well. But it looks like maybe when you have a war like that, maybe that's the best of those two guys in the past at this point.
Yeah, definitely. It does feel like that. Maybe it is the stuck between styles thing, because you see this guy off the rope and you're just like, what are you doing, dude? Like, are you hurt?
Yeah.
Otherwise, get off the rope and stop trying to counter. I don't want to see any shoulder roll, nothing like that, So I think that might, who knows, maybe the weight at this was a higher weight, so he should have felt better, but it does kind of, I don't know, man. It does kind of feel like, that it's just he's either past it or he's between styles or a combination of both. Who knows? So this 4-episode The Kings, which obviously had to do with the 4 Kings, Hagler, Leonard, Hearns, and Duran, starting late 70s, going all the way through the 80s. It's been really well done. We're not going to break down episode by episode, but it does kind of get into all of their beginnings. How Sugar Ray Leonard was kind of like, the gold medalist in the guy doing the kid at that time, really the young man doing those 7-Up commercials, and just the Golden Boy before Golden Boy, right? And then Hagler, grinding his way to the top. You had in the 70s Duran just going off as a lightweight. You had Hearns coming up as well, knocking people, out left and right. In that they actually showed that Aaron Pryor trial loss for the Olympic bouts, and they mixed in the Reagan era, Panama, the Panama Canal, all sorts of stuff when it comes to that. I mean, the amount of people that were at that Panamanian airport when he came back after that Leonard fight was just phenomenal. But there was a lot of good stuff in it, from a variety, from the fighters, from layers of managers and trainers and broadcasters, and I just thought it was really, really well done. It's definitely worth a stream. There's 4 episodes, and if you have Showtime, you can just watch them anytime you want. I think the 3rd episode's coming this week or this weekend. Yeah. So, you know, it was awesome. And it obviously, you know, it went through all the different fights, obviously all the matchmaking and how, you know, it looked like Hearns was done. Then he came back against Leonard. It looked like Duran was done. And, you know, it definitely showed Duran as the bad boy role. And you know, it also highlighted something, you know, at one point Ali, and I knew there was a drought, but I had forgotten that Ali was like the only U.S. titleist. I can't remember what year it was. It was 1970. I can't remember what year they said. So it was factual. It was interesting. It was in-depth. And it just ran the gamut all the way to, you know, of course, Leonard and Hagler and Leonard and Tommy again and whatnot. And just kind of going through that. Leonard and Duran, which is, you know, the last one was a really slow fight. But I know you didn't see all the episodes or see the documentary fully just yet. So like I said, we don't have to break down. A lot of people are going to watch it. But it's in-depth. It's good. It's funny. It's both telling. It's a lot of things. There's also a lot of times where money does, it turns out, John, money does play a role in being a free agent or signing a short deal just to make certain fights do play a role in boxing, even in the prime era like the 80s like that. To hear a lot of times Leonard saying, when the money's right, I'll fight him and all that, and how that's sacrilegious to say now, but we know that's at the end of the day. If Spence and Crawford could do $1.5 million on pay-per-view, they'd probably be looking at a rematch by now. But overall, you know, if you've seen any of the episodes, feel free to talk about it. But just in general, having lived through it as a boxing fan, I would love your take just in general on this subject with the Four Kings and the hell of a run they had that helped, you know, kind of bridge that Ali gap. And then obviously they even mentioned it on the last episode about how they set the tone, made it even more popular. Every fight that they had almost, or a lot of them, were record-breaking purses and all that. And then Tyson came along and took that thing and ran. But your thoughts in just in general of the era as well?
Yeah, well, I think that they made a good point that I had kind of forgotten as well, that you mentioned that you know, there was a little bit of a U.S. drought of titleists. And, you know, Ali, of course, being the most popular athlete in the world at that time and being the heavyweight champion of the world and, you know, starting to near the end of his run, that was when boxing then hit. I always called it a new golden era, and you do hear of that. It referred to that a lot of times.
Yeah.
Which really, you know, you do kind of look at that with the Duran-Leonard one, you know, being around, not exactly that being the date, but around the start of it, and then really carrying through until it was really short-lived. I mean, there were other big moments, but I think you were on the other side of the hill already even though some of these great fights that, you know, you mentioned even involving these fighters, and of course, you know, like Hagler-Hearns was a great fight in '85, but you were already on the downside of that slope, I think, as you got into '83, and, you know, you had the tragedy of the, you know, Ray Mancini and Dooku Kim in November of '82 on national TV on CBS, then the silly, because it had nothing to do with it, the silly decision of the WBC to, at the end of 1982, cut their fights to 12 rounds. And then, you know, what I like to throw into it that people don't talk about enough, because you still had a lot of great fights involving it, but it did water things down, is, you know, that's also right around that time as you're getting to the end of the second golden era of about, you know, 3 years or so, but such a great, you know, 3 years, and boxing being extremely popular and all over network TV, is, you know, then you started having these junior weight classes that even when they were around, really the general boxing public didn't care about or pay much attention to. They started getting into the mix. You already had, one thing that is revisionist history is, fans that lived through the era and old school fans, they were not happy with two champions. I mean, that's like a myth I hear now, and it applies to all these types of
right.
stuff too. Like, nobody was happy. I mean, that's bull when you hear that now. Oh, there was only two champs. It was great. Yeah, sure, it was better than four champs or more, but nobody was happy with two champs. Don't let anybody sell you on that who lived through that era. Nobody was happy with two champs back then. So, but that's, I think the way I look at the Four Kings thing is it became kind of almost a marketing thing to tie things together, really a little bit towards casual type fans, even though these are some of the greatest fighters of all time, without any doubt about it. Absolute legends. But I mean, like, why I say that is, like, Duran, he had already had his run at lightweight. I mean, Duran had already secured his place as one of the greatest lightweights of all time before he even fought Sugar Ray Leonard the first time. He was 71-1. Which is amazing. And he was literally feared. I mean, he was a guy that, when I saw him as a kid, when I was watching him, the guy literally scared me as a kid watching him on TV because the way on network TV, because he looked like he was trying to kill people. I mean, here was this guy, with this goatee and this dark black hair flying around and who was skilled and powerful, but he looked like he was trying to kill people out there. And, so Duran, he had already done all that before he fought Leonard for the first time in June of 1980. These are the things I think you have to clarify a little, where it's fun because all those fights in the era to tie these four together, but you have to make the distinctions, I think, if you're looking at them fairly and really evaluating the era. So, like, Duran was already one of the greatest lightweights of all time before he fought Leonard, and that wasn't going to change. But then, he affirmed his greatness. Of course, he beat Palomino, who was an excellent fighter at welterweight, before he fought Leonard. And of course, Leonard was the holy grail payday because he was coming out of the Olympics and he was the golden boy of that time. And like you said, he was on the 7-Up commercial, and, Duran ended up being on the 7-Up commercial with him. But just saying that, look, I think what people don't get today, and it really did matter, with people not caring about those junior classes, Duran never bothered picking up a 140 belt because nobody cared. I mean, that's the way it was back then. In other words, it was
right.
Leonard's got division that matters. I'm the lightweight champ. I'm going up to the welterweight division and picking up that belt. That's the way it was coming into that era. And I think that's really important to look at. That's why, it didn't matter. It wasn't like alphabet belt collecting. Nobody cared about that. And, I think, to me, it was almost like when I look at these, then what people are calling the Four Kings, as great as all these fights was and the era was, it was kind of like the best of the old era still around with some of the things these guys did. And then especially with Leonard, as great as a fighter as he was, like, you started to the downside, though, was you started to see a little bit of the permeating in of some of the things that got to be bad in the future, like the, caring about junior alphabet belts. Remember Leonard insisted when he fought Hagler, it was going to be 12 rounds, title fights had always been 15. Hagler was the lineal unified champion. He'd only fought in 15-round title fights. As amazing as it was what Leonard did in that comeback, I mean, again, you got to look at what era we were in and coming off of, historically, everything being 15 rounds. And Hagler had just, to his complete credit, ruled with an iron fist, literally, as the unified middleweight champ. There was no debate. You had to go through him. There was no 168 pounds at that point. Again, remember at that point, but then when you get into the tail end of the Three Kings era, you've got the Four Kings. You've got, Leonard picking up newly created WBC, 168-pound belt, and Hearns fighting for a WBO.
Fighting for two different belts at different. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Right. You had, again, you got to remember, because nobody cared. Now, again, people confuse it. Like when Leonard fought Ayub Kalule and just took him out, as a tune-up before he fought Hearns. Again, people confuse it. They look at it now. They say, "Oh, he fought the 154-pound belt holder." Yeah, he did. Nobody cared about that belt then. Okay. In other words, that's why it was a tune-up. So, in other words, it was beneath guys like Leonard and Duran, when they were entering that era. Now, of course, then they all started fighting, for those belts, and Duran beat Davey Moore for a 154. But remember, when he'd lost to Benitez already at 154 pounds. So, these were some of the greatest, Duran's certainly one of the top lightweights of all time. Leonard is one of the top 10 welterweights of all time. Those two guys are both, I think Duran's in the top 10 fighters of all time. I think Leonard is probably around 10, 11. That would be, I think historians go with that. I agree with that. Hagler, one of the top 10 middleweights of all time, and Tommy Hearns, who really was one of my favorite fighters of all time. To me, he's like the guy who, he's right up there with anybody of all time in terms of, the guy went 3 traditional weight classes, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and covered them fighting at the top of those divisions. So, that's all-time.
Very underrated skills, too, as we found out in that first Leonard fight, too, when he was outboxing Leonard.
Without a doubt. Tommy Hearns did not have great power as an amateur. He was always thin, but then his upper body got bigger when he was a pro, even though he was a very young guy. And it's amazing that with the guys coming up, that young. I think what was Hearns, 22 when he fought Leonard the first time. I mean, it's amazing what these guys had accomplished already. But to me, as great as Tommy Hearns was, because again, this was an era where you still had some of that great stuff from the older eras, where you're looking at one real champ of division, even though there was 2 sanctioning bodies. But the public looking to more of that. Like, in other words, Leonard, to his credit, he beat Tommy Hearns. I mean, that was for the welterweight championship of the world. When he beat Marvin Hagler, it's a shame it was 12 rounds, but it was an amazing comeback, controversial decision. I thought Hagler could have gotten the win, but Leonard got it. That was for the middleweight champion of the world. In other words, he's picking up the belts in those 2 divisions against one guy. He is the guy, the champ. Duran was the lightweight champion of the world. Then he beat Leonard in as good of a fight as anybody's ever had. Maybe Joe Frazier in his, first fight with Ali, that type of a performance. He becomes the welterweight champion of the world, I mean, and then later on, of course, he beats a guy at middleweight, Barkley, who had knocked out Tommy Hearns. So, these are where you're getting into those old school, extraordinary type accomplishments, and then of course the great fights they all had with each other. But to me, it's like they personify the best of all the old era and what was great of boxing. And then you get a little bit of some of the stuff creeping in, especially later on, that actually became some of the things that were unpleasant about modern boxing, modern present day boxing, things that crept in. So I find that kind of interesting too. It was all in a relatively short period of time, but these guys, some of the greatest old school type accomplishments and fighting each other, which you wish you would see more of today. But then later on, some of the things, really being spearheaded by Leonard, that kind of were some of the things that became problems in boxing later on that were starting to rear their head.
Right, and I do like how you put it, how it wasn't like 79 to 89, which kind of marks the end of that run within them guys fighting each other. Obviously, the third fight, and they even said it in the doc. They're like, yeah, you could just turn that puppy off. There's not much to watch in that fight with Duran and Leonard, the third one. But in like over a 10-year span, when you look back at it, it's not a 10-year span, and I'm glad that you pointed that out. In that 83-ish whatever date, that 4 or 5 years of it, where it was boom, boom, boom. You're right. That was actually, I mean, you had Duran, fighter of the decade in the 70s. Like, whatever he did was cherry on top. And look at what he did with that cherry on top. But it did take, like, from 79 to 86, because 86 is when Leonard and Hearns fought. And even that second Hearns and Leonard fight, which obviously Leonard, not post-fight, but not that long after and years after that, I always said, that drop was bullshit. I did lose that fight. He admitted it, stuff like that. But you could see them fading in that time, and they were not in their primes anymore. And sometimes, I mean, thank God, John, there's no boxing Twitter back then, because, I mean, they would have said about Tommy Hearns and Duran should not be getting in the ring. I'm going to boycott the pay-per-view. Like, they would have just laid it on them. And don't get me wrong, people were saying that too, like the mainstream media and the sports media too. Like, this is just, even when Leonard came back, as his eye, the detached retina, this is suicide. Why is he even doing this? And all that. So it did take a long time. We've seen the PBC welterweights mix it up. Thurman's injury or time off, a lot of people are in between on how long he was out, for what reasons or whatever, but that kind of screwed up them all fighting each other, obviously, and I'm definitely not comparing, eras or anything like that, but you're right, it really was more of a 4 or 5 when they're in their prime, ready to go, and they fought each other and all that, and then it did kind of lend itself to what happens in boxing. Some guy gets his ass kicked because he wasn't training properly. Then all of a sudden he got re-motivated. That's what they said, with Duran and Hearns. And same with Leonard when he was out of the limelight, how in the back of his head he's like, screw this. And after that Duran fight, and I remember this exactly, after Duran said, hey, dude, you box this dude, you could beat Hagler, because I almost beat him myself, and I'm washed, So it was just the documentary itself, just to clear that up or clean that up. Tie that up with a bow was damn good. And you're right. I'm glad that you put a little bit more clarity to that, because the Le Mans, you're right. There is some fights down the stretch. I still remember watching the replay of Leonard's last fight on Tuesday Night Fights on USA. I was at my girlfriend's house, and because she had cable. And I watched the first couple rounds like, yeah, this is exactly what I thought it'd be. Turn it, but of course I'm a Leonard fan, so I had to turn it back, see some more. Oh, I don't want to see it. It was, those last 2 fights were tough to watch, no doubt about it, with Camacho and then obviously Norris. But overall, though, the ups and downs all these guys took, a lot of the Hagler stuff was early in his career as far as ups and downs. Then it was just sky high, and he got popular. Everyone kind of got their popularity after a while, and that's why everybody kind of adored and loved everyone. Another thing I will say, John, I'm really glad that you put the controversial Leonard Hagler in its right frame. You can say, I think Hagler could have done enough. I think Leonard, whatever. But this whole thing, and it still lingers today, John, like Hagler, had 10 rounds on him. And I'm a Leonard fan. That's my favorite fight of all time. So I'm putting it on the table. I'm biased. But there's no way you can watch that fight, especially coming out orthodox, trying to have a chess match with a chess match, king. That was just a stupid way to start the fight anyway. R.I.P. Hagler. But this whole thing about Hagler got completely robbed. I just don't see that. Rob, did you see the fight? Like, you can say Hagler won. That's cool. I'm not going to argue that. It was a competitive fight. But to sit there and say he was robbed, he was done for, it was easy to score it to Hagler, to me that just showed a lot more biasness that was back then, where a lot of people either loved or hated Leonard in a sense too, because of that pretty boy image.
Yeah, I think, you make a good point there, Chris, in the sense that, I thought Hagler did enough to win it, but, my late father, who, has as much boxing knowledge as anybody I knew. I mean, he thought, I remember, the night of the fight, he thought that, really that Leonard did enough. He could have gotten it. It could have gotten either way, but he wasn't looking at it as a robbery. And you do remind me. I think I should add also to clarify my perspective on things, which I think fits a little bit what I was talking about. Now, Duran, he had made his mark at lightweight. Hagler had made his mark separately at middleweight, and in that kind of golden era I was talking about, like he destroyed Minter in 80. He'd been denied a title shot for a long time, and then a lot of people thought he beat Antifermo. I thought he let his foot off the gas a little too much, and
he did.
Let Antifermo escape with that draw. But a lot of people thought Hagler should have gotten the nod, and he came back with that vengeance. He didn't give up. He got the shot for the second time against Minter, and Minter is a very good fighter, and it was over, in London, and Hagler just obliterated him. But what I'm saying is, like, that was Marvin Hagler was kind of marching. He wasn't as popular, but he was on his march towards popularity. And I can say for certain, before, like, Roberto Duran got in with him in 83, I mean, again, middleweights had nowhere to go. Hagler was the champ. A tough guy like Mustafa Hamsho, he had to try to go through Hagler twice. I mean, that's the kind of way it should be. It's tough to win a title, tough to be the guy. Not you run around, you get another alphabet belt, or you have a 168-pound class that nobody needs. I mean, that didn't exist yet. So Hagler was just literally knocking out all his challengers after picking up the title in 80 through 83. Did not have the name opponent. I mean, that's what he was missing. You got to get that perspective back too. He was the middleweight guy. These guys were not.
And that's why people loved him in the end too, because he had to work for it.
He had to really work for it. And then Duran was his first chance at a name, and then Duran performed extremely well and was the first title challenger to go the distance with Hagler. Then later on, of course, in 85, he had the memorable war with Hearns, one of the greatest rounds, if not the greatest round of all time. Then Leonard, he got Leonard in 87. So in other words, it's kind of like for different reasons than Duran, but Hagler was a guy, he of course was the middleweight, the bigger guy, but he'd made his mark. He'd already run through all his challengers. It was later on in his career that then he got the shot at these bigger, name guys. And, he had to, of course, he got the win over Duran. Then he got the knockout win over Hearns. And, I think we can tie it into the modern. And, Chris, I've always sensed this as something, you agree with me on. And believe me, I'm not trying to overly bust on the guy. I complimented earlier in the show, about his power. And I think the guy's got talent. But this is why when I see this whining about, Gennady Golovkin, I don't have much tolerance for it, I mean, Hagler had some tough setbacks. He didn't get a title shot. Then, he got the draw with Antifermo. There was only one champ per division. He had to keep at it. Then he didn't get his bigger name guys till later on. He got a win over Duran. He got the KO over Hearns. Controversial loss to Leonard. I mean, okay, so, Golovkin, he had the draw with Canelo the first time. I thought the draw was fair. In other words, he didn't get it done. Then even though I'm not saying it wasn't very close the second time, it was, but lost the fight. He didn't get it done. I mean,
he didn't body punch either. How are you this killer? You didn't even body punch. That just kind of opened up my eyes. You still owe Jacobs a rematch in my mind.
Yeah, and he didn't. And again, Canelo being, let's face it, by far the best fighter he's ever fought. We got to remember that, by far the best. People who don't like Canelo don't want to say that, who are Golovkin fans. And I think they make a mistake because it's actually would help their argument that, in other words, if I'm a Golovkin, if I'm one of these Golovkin fanatics, what they don't say that to me they should say is, hey, Canelo's a great fighter. He's number one pound for pound. My guy had a draw and a close loss to him. That's no shame, But they don't want to say that. They want to scream about conspiracies.
They just want to say 2-0. It was 2-0. Both fights were 10-2. It's like it was 1-1, dude.
Right. Both fights were 10-2. Now all of a sudden, I'm being sarcastic, but you have to say it. All of a sudden, why was it in Golovkin's 2 fights with Canelo that he all of a sudden wasn't permitted to win a fight by knockout?
Right.
I mean, in other words, all of a sudden he can't score a knockout, and all those same Golovkin fanatics were not saying before the first Canelo Golovkin fight that, oh, it's going to be tight, it's a close one. It was Golovkin's going to kill him. He just needed to get this chance. He's going to kill him. He's winning by knockout. Well, then all of a sudden those predictions were forgotten. In other words, he wasn't too old then. It was
right.
He's going to knock him out. Yeah.
Next thing you know, he's washed.
So, I'm just saying Marvin Hagler didn't need those excuses. He persevered. Right. I mean, and that's why, like you said, people loved him with the work ethic and the staying at it. I mean, and I think he just retired after the Leonard fight, and I always agreed with that decision. I think he knew he was done, and frankly, I think he was done. Mad at him. I think he was done. Yeah, I think he was done.
Look at the other three guys and the punishment they took down the stretch of their careers. It was a very smart idea.
I think he was done. And one thing I'll say, even though I think Hagler edged that fight, and heck, I was a little frustrated because I was feeling for Hagler in that fight, wanted to see him win. It was close. I thought he pulled it out, but I agree with what you're saying, Chris, and like knowledgeable people like my dad said, could have gone either way. But this I will say, and I don't think, because I never really wanted to say it, I haven't said it to too many people, but I've watched that fight a million times too, and even though I thought it should have been 15 rounds, when you look at how done Marvin Hagler was,
that's true.
Even though he was doing his best to come on, and Leonard was tired, I don't think the 15 rounds would have particularly helped him that night. I just think that he was looking like he was really at the end of the line, and it wasn't that Leonard was as fresh as a daisy, but you thought that going in, but I don't think when you watch those 12, you could say, well, it was going to be an automatic thing for Marvin Hagler if this thing had to go another 3 rounds, because he was looking mighty gassed himself, and he was always in shape, but I just think he was at the end of the line.
During this, I've heard, and I think it's blasphemy, and I don't say that much, but I've heard people say that the Hagler-Leonard fight was the second best fight of the series. And, of course, we all know, Hagler-Hearns was the best fight, right? I think that's fair.
Right.
But I think people are sleeping on that Duran-Leonard first fight. To me, as far as two-way competitiveness, big shots landing, I'll take that from a watching standpoint, their first fight, Duran and Leonard, over Leonard and Hagler. And I don't think it's all that close, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm going over the top with the all that close comment, but I think it's a better, more entertaining fight. I'm not saying, I thought Duran won that one cleaner actually than the outcome, of the other one. But from an action standpoint, to see, especially then, to see Leonard on the ropes and him having to he got clocked early, looked like he was going to get knocked down, super hurt, recoup, but then he would do those shoe shine, turn them into power shots off the ropes too. To me, action-packed, and maybe because they threw more punches, it seemed like Hagler and Leonard was a slow build, It was a slow build that got better, whereas pretty much from Jump Street, the Duran and Leonard's fight popped off pretty early.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there, Chris. I think, in all the series of fights between the four kings, you got to put Hagler-Hearns first, and then I think you put Leonard-Duran one second. Those, and I think those two would stand out well above any of the other ones, really. Then you have other ones that are good, like they have
Hagler,
plenty
of drama.
Leonard,
it was a slow fight, but it was drama filled.
Yeah, and Leonard-Hearns one is probably, I think that's going to come in before Hagler and Leonard as well. but Hagler, Leonard, had some good moments. It was certainly memorable and exciting, and to be any good. And I didn't think it would be either. I got to say, full disclosure, I remember the day
I was
that fight.
scared. I was scared as a Leonard fight. I was definitely scared.
But I'm thinking of the Leonard Hearns too. You brought out something that people have forgotten, and I remember that day well. That was in, I believe that was in that 88 or 89. It was one of those. I can tell you it was one of those.
Yeah, I think it was 80. I think it was 89.
Yeah, but everybody thought Hearns was done, and I was a big Hearns fan. I was in disgust. I mean, I was actually one of those fans that you were referring to. I thought, Leonard's setting this up. But remember, this is that, even though that ended up being a very good fight and Hearns pulled the surprise, again, that stuff was starting to creep in. Like Leonard was thinking Hearns was done. I mean, everybody was thinking that. And then he was having weight requirements for that fight. This was stuff you weren't seeing up to that point. I mean, we know nowadays this is permeated in, but when a belt or title was supposed to be on the line, there was remember, Leonard was setting certain weight restrictions and this again, nowadays to people and younger fans, it seems like nothing, but I'm trying to give you the time perspective where this was the later part of the Four Kings era. Like I said, unfortunately, these guys were all legitimately great.
And Leonard was the biggest, the money draw, so he could get away.
And Leonard was and Leonard was the money guy, and it was when you were really first starting to see some of the stuff come in that we don't like today. As great as Leonard was, and I don't dispute his greatness at all. Like I said, he's probably, when historians are ranking him, he's probably around the 11th greatest fighter of all time. So, you can't get much better than that, and I don't dispute
I think he was the best fighter out of those, but Duran had the best career.
Yeah, and that's a close one, right? Who was actually, the best fighter, Leonard or Duran? Like I said, I think when we rank the careers, then Duran comes slightly ahead, but there are historians even who would just flip them. It's close, but I think more right now, not that just means everything, but when you look at real legit historians, most of them give Duran a little bit of an edge there, but it's very close.
Yeah.
And you'll see good historians who have him flipped. But that's the way that kind of goes. I think Hearns is getting a bit underrated. And again, this to me would give you some perspective, greatness on the Four Kings, and I don't think it's nostalgic. Like, when somebody talks about like a Joe Calzaghe, like even being in the same league as a Hearns, to me that's laughable. I mean, Calzaghe's not close. I mean, it's not. To me, it's like not even like I literally would say that. I mean, they're on like different levels. So that's how great the guys, the Four Kings guys are as fighters, but they come from different spots. Hagler at the heavy end of the chain and Duran at the light end of the chain, and then Leonard and Hearns the same, where they both came in as welterweights at the same time.
There you have it. I appreciate you taking an extended amount of time for the segment tonight, sir. Any final thoughts?
Let's see. I think we've covered up the only final thought, but yeah, you mentioned Cruz and Vargas. I like Isaac Cruz. Didn't look as good in his last fight, but I think the guy he was in with was in for survival. We know Vargas doesn't do that, but I'm with you. I mean, guys can do what they want. It's their freedom. It's their health. But, I really don't think Fernando Vargas should be in with I don't think Francisco Vargas should be in with Isaac Cruz at this point. I'm
it's
curious,
like on the edge of your seat, but not for the normal reason, right? Like not because you're on the edge of the seat for a brawl, on the edge of the seat that the guy makes it out okay.
But for purely Isaac Cruz's perspective, I hope Isaac Cruz looks good, because I do like him, and he's a young guy with power. Like I said, that's a good combination. I'm just trying to think. I think we've covered everything. It's good talking with you a long length of time. Like you said, the Leo Almeida's not bad either. So hopefully this is going to be a day of boxing so full that we're going to get some good surprises out of it, but we're probably going to have to get some surprises.
All right, sir. You have yourself a good night. Enjoy the fights this weekend.
All right, Chris. Thanks for having me. Good talking with you.
Yes, sir. Take it easy.
Take care.
Yep. All righty. Great boxing mind there, as per usual. Good old John telling us how it is. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, man. I mean, it's crazy. Duran, dude. He's like the fighter of the decade in the 70s. And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to do what I did in the 80s, like 79. It's crazy. But I'm glad he pointed that out because, like, as far as, like, the time frame, because, yeah, I think you can literally chalk it from 79 to 89 if I'm doing the dates right. And did that spill into the 90s? I think it did that to No, I don't think so. But, you know, these fights, like they say, oh, they fought a trilogy. They did that. Yeah, they did. But that shit was extended. We're talking if 7 years to take place, from even being kind in their somewhat primes, 79 to 86. 86 being Leonard and Hagler. And yeah, I was frightened. I was frightened as a young kid that he, my guy, Leonard would, especially when he did that comeback fight and he got knocked down. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And people forget how funny all those guys were. We all knew that about Duran and stuff like that, or even like Vito the Mosquito, those type of lines from Hagler, and some stuff that Hearns and Stewart always beating the drum that nobody wants to fight him, and then clips of Leonard being the money man. So like we were talking about, he could maneuver his way how he felt it. He even gave up some of that money up front to get the right type of 12 rounds and 20 by 20 and all that. So, they're just all four great fighters. And like I said, you should definitely check out that documentary. The way they were doing it at the start when they were like stacking up the fights of Leonard on a pile of money in his total purse, I was kind of like, I hope the documentary's not like this the whole time. I got to admit, when it started, I was like, oh, I thought we were going to get into social issues and stuff like that. I don't need the total amount of, every fight or whatever. But it was well done, like beyond well done. Damn good. And, yeah, so that's that's something the boxing fan definitely to watch. A lot of old clips, a lot of Bob Aaron. I mean, what's up with Bob saying the ghetto plane, though? Like, well, should I really be? We've heard of the no black fighters, right? When they're building the prospect, no black fighters, they got the NBF up there on a chalkboard or whatever. But yeah, man, it's definitely good. It's definitely good. I mean, could you imagine boxing Twitter on the night of the no moss from Duran? Oh my God. And then he still comes back and just does some shit where you're like, what? He did what to Davey Moore and Barkley? And he almost beat Hearns, for Christ's sakes. Yeah, man, it was definitely good. All right, let's go out to Portland. We still have some current fight news we're going to discuss. Talk about the undercard give my thoughts on some of the undercard stuff for the Wilder Fury 3, which I think is pretty dope. Like I said, current fight news, a little bit of boxing Twitter, and just all that good stuff. All right, let's go out to Portland 503. What's going on, my man? How the hell are you?
Mexicanos al grito de guerra, el acero apretado y el brigón, y retiembla en sus centros la tierra al sonoro rugir del cañón.
Hey, yo, what up, Chris? Yo, I'm doing good here in sunny-ass Oregon today. Everything is good, but how you doing, brother? How's everything, bro?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good, man. It's good to hear you doing good as well. Dude, it's been hot like a mother effer here, dude. It's been hot as hell, but I'm not going to complain too much.
Nah, hell no. I'll take this weather right now, bro. So, you know what I mean? I usually have the complainer during the wintertime all the time, so I'll take this. But, yeah, bro, a lot of fights. Let's get to it, bro. If I could really recap real quick, Mayweather, Paul. I ended up buying the fight just because I ended up kind of like last minute, like fuck it, like let's just do it, whatever. So you know what I mean. So I watched it, right, and first of all, I want to shout out to Arias for pulling off the upset over Jared Hurd. You know what I mean? Shout out to him, and he did it in the way he you could tell the way he fought, and he was very emotional after the fight in his post fight interview, and he was very emotional, and you could tell like he was fighting for like his career, fighting for his dinner, fighting for like just to stay fucking alive in boxing and be talked about and not forgot about. And so, you got to give the shout out to him because, man, he pulled it off, and you could just, in that performance, he just fought his ass off, and then just kept coming at him, kept put the pressure on him, and kept hitting him and wouldn't stop. So, yeah.
Sure did,
man. But you know what I mean? So, yeah, shout out to Eddie. Yeah, hell yeah, man. I was happy for him, too. And but I was definitely sad for Jared Hurd, if I could just say, because, man, I really like this guy. He, he fights in the inside. I really like inside fighters. But I don't know, for some reason, like you were saying, Chris, earlier, like, when he was up against the ropes, it wasn't working out. And I was thinking the same thing, like, you got to turn, you got to move. And, the only thing I could say is there's the 50 Cent quote comes up from his song, where he says, switch your style up and then watch your money pile up. I think he needs to definitely switch styles, and he definitely needs to. I always hate saying new train or something, but it's time to maybe get out of his training situation and move to. I would say, because I don't know, he seems like he wants to stick to fighting in the inside. So I would say, like a great, like Mexicano trainer, Joel Diaz, Robert Garcia. I know these kind of trainers will help out tremendously. I just feel maybe a training camp, a different training camp, a different style. We could, he's still
even
he
just
doesn't
a
have
steady
his
jab.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when Maidana, who his management early before he got with Al. They'd have him in 3-week camps before fights and shit like that, which is just ridiculous. But when he got with Garcia got him a jab and a full camp, and next thing you know is on. If Hurd just keeps strong with that jab, I think that's good enough. That's kind of like head movement on the way in. He's got to stick to what he knows. He's already proven now, right, that he can't do that style, that whatever the hell style he's trying to do.
Yeah, it's too much waiting, in my opinion, and he just gets hit, and it's just too much. He's trying to get counters off of them and have little short shots in the inside, but it was just definitely not working out that night for him. And but yeah, man, that fight is good. I wouldn't tell Jerry Hurd to hang it up. I don't want to be harsh on him because I do like him. I just, like I said, he could still make noise. It's not the end of the road for him. So I just hope he, all he has to do is recover, regroup. Just to have a new plan in motion, you could still be in it. You're still in the fight. You're still there.
Get his ass kicked.
He didn't. Yeah,
it wasn't ugly. Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, like you said, he didn't get his ass whooped. He didn't get knocked out. It wasn't a one-punch knockout. So it's just, He just lost on the cards, and the fight was taken to him. So But shout out to Arias, he got the win, and also too shout out to Badu Jack. I know you wanted the fight with fucking Pascal, and Pascal seemed to fucking test positive for everything. Yeah, test positive for everything,
they found
including
stuff they didn't even know existed in his body, dude.
Right. He tested everything. He probably positive for everything, including the kitchen sink, and dude, I don't know. It was shitty. Just a shitty time because that fight was so close to being there. Obviously he got a tune-up, so shout out to Badu Jack. He got a win on a big stage. So shout out to him. And also the Mayweather fight. If I could just brush up on it, I thought. A lot of people were harsh on Mayweather. I just want to say that I just expected a little bit more. Like sometimes I believe, I don't know, like to me, sometimes we always, how we always talk about that, even like an old man like Mike Tyson could, like an old 60-year-old, 70-year-old Mike Tyson would beat your ass. And, this is kind of an opportunity to show that, a boxer at a high, an elite level fighter and, pushing with a lot of experience could still knock out a YouTube guy. And I'm just sad that didn't happen. Like I didn't like that Floyd wasn't able to, hurt him or put him down or stop it before, you know what I mean? I just expected a lot more from Floyd. I know he's up in age and he had some excuses, but this wasn't even a real fight. This was a YouTuber. This is just some dude that, you know, was 0-0 or 0-1 coming into the fight. And, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. To me, he's like, I hate to say it, but I think Paul won the fight just because he went the distance. Like, he's got bragging rights, and he could go ahead and say he went the distance with the best ever.
Hey, it
helps
brother Jake like a mother effort too, if you think about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and
because they can always say, yeah, but that happened. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There was even a moment though. There was a moment when he got him with that left hook, and it did look like it affected Paul. Did you see that, where he kind of scooped him up a little bit? And people are kind of, because it was an exhibition, and I did see that. And when I look at it, it's like, damn, this is an exhibition, though, and it's for Showtime, and Showtime just did a deal with Jake Paul. So is this part of just the ongoing marketing, because they also had a bunch of signups that night, too. So when it's an exhibition, dude, you know what I mean? It's always in between. Yeah. He told us that he wasn't really training. He was just trying to be in shape or whatever. But you're right. The fact that he went the distance, that's like winning for Jake or for Paul.
Yeah, it didn't look good. It didn't look good at all. I just, you know what I mean? Because he should have knocked his ass out, like, mid-rounds or something, but didn't happen. But, it's just kind of sad because, like, even if it was scheduled for 12, it's hard not to think that Paul would have made it all 12 rounds, you know what I mean? And I don't know, it was kind of a stain on Floyd, a stain on boxing, and but it's behind us. Let's put it behind us, and hopefully, holy shit, hopefully, Floyd, hopefully that's not the last of Floyd we see in the ring. Like, I'd hate to really think of Floyd.
I hope it is. I think it needs to be if he looked that bad, because he can't even do full camps, dude. He can't do 8-week camps now because he gets hurt. So I know what you're saying, like the lasting thing, but the lasting thing I remember is Pacquiao and Canelo. I don't really put this in, you know what I mean? I'd say let's not see him anymore.
Right? Yeah, definitely not see him anymore. And but yeah, but also I just want to say they both are winners at the end of the night because they got a really fat paycheck at the end of the night after that one. So, you know what I mean? And but as far as also to the event that happened this last weekend, Shakur Stevens, I mean, like you said earlier, Chris, it was a lackluster performance. I agree with you. He should have had some urgency to perform, to kind of put the pressure, look good, try to maybe hurt him, stop him. And, it was too much of trying to wait on his opponent and trying to counter all night. But Shakur, he got the win, and that's what it's about. So he moves on with his career and as a winner. So, hopefully that Valdez fight is up in the horizon, but I don't see it just because Shakur is still, kind of building his name still. And Valdez, obviously, with the huge win over Burchett, he's going to I'm sure he's going to capitalize on a bigger fight or a bigger opportunity. So, but Shakur won. Shout out to the kid, the young guy. So, and like he said too, Chris, like, he didn't, people are always comparing him to Floyd and stuff. And I didn't see that in him, during this fight. But I hope, we could stop the notion of saying, the next Floyd.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully they,
just like we did this with Jordan too. This guy's the next Jordan, just stop, dude. Jordan's Jordan. Mayweather's Mayweather. Just stop,
Yeah.
It's getting old. It's getting really old.
Yeah, definitely, because it's every young black just a young black American fighter that always, you know what I mean, they all get labeled the next. Can he be the next Floyd? Can he be? You know what I mean? That's a little too harsh of too much of a big shoes. Yeah, hell yeah. So, and I'm sure Shakur Stevenson likes the idea of being the next Floyd, but also being criticized and being like, oh, well, Floyd would have done this at a younger age. That still stings to him. So I'm sure he's hearing all about it online and everything. So, but as far as that, Shakur won, and he hopefully he gets a good fight, like you said. Hopefully maybe that his brethren that I forgot his name. Help me out, Chris.
Herring.
His name. Herring. Yeah,
Herring.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Herring. Yeah, hopefully that fight is in the horizon for him. I would like that. So, hopefully they can make that. And also shout out to Rojas. who was on the undercard and got a win over McReary. And that that was a good fight.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, another fellow Mexicano getting that stuff. So yeah, it was good. And also, what else? I also want to shout out to Barrera, Jesus Sotocaros. They had a exhibition, I believe, in Southern California, I want to say, and it looked all right. If I was in the area, I would have definitely turned up. But it was an exhibition. You know what I mean? They got their money, so I just want to shout them out real fast. And also, Shields, Clarissa Shields MMA debut. I would really like to say, holy crap, what that girl is a born fighter. I'm just so happy that she got the win and was able to put her away in the third round after having those 2 rounds lost, in my opinion. So Clarissa Shields gets the win by TKO, and like I just gotta say, it was just awesome to see that, because I always love. Because I love boxing. Boxing is always first in my heart and in my soul. So if I see a boxer laying hands on an MMA fighter like that, that's just it's awesome. It's awesome to see, in my opinion. So shout out to Clarissa Shields. She got her win, and hopefully she'll continue with another win. And it looks like she might be coming into boxing for her next fight. But hopefully Hopefully in MMA, she gets kind of. I would like to see a better test after this one. This is obviously was a gimme fight, but she looked good in it. But I would love to see kind of another girl with her kind of skilled level in MMA. I'm not saying throw her in there with the Wolves just yet, but she definitely needs some. She needs to get her wrestling down, her ground game down, everything. So she, you know what I mean? So shout out to Clarissa Shields for getting the win. That was dope to see. And also shout out to Amanda Serrano. She also got a win in MMA this Saturday. So, I believe it was like not rear naked, guillotine choke. And it was like in the first minute of the first round. So shout out to her. Like in boxing, even you know what I mean. Even though it's not boxing, these girls are winning in MMA. So I just want to shout them out. And also the Munguia versus Zarameta. This fight's gonna be good. I believe it's on the Zone. So I'm definitely staying tuned to this one. This one should be good. And also I like this one, the Charlo versus Juan Macias Montiel. You already know, Chris, I got Montiel on this one. Hopefully pulls off the upset, and, we get a new name in the middleweight division, man, and so I would really love that. I would really love to see that. Also, we got Teofimo Lopez, George Cambosos. All I could say is that Lopez is definitely about the money. I like his style. He's definitely all I could, and I want to say something too. A lot of this, because Devin Haney has the full belt right for the WBC in that weight class. But Teofimo is the man. Like he beat the man.
Yes.
So he is the man of the division. Yeah, that's just like because there's just so much confusion. He's got Devin Haney's got the belt, but it's like a lot of casual fans are confused. But I can tell you straight up that Teofimo is the man of that division. Even though Haney is a champion, I still have respect for him. But we all know Teofimo is the man of that division. You know what I mean? So like Ric Flair said, you know what I mean? To beat the man or to be the man, you gotta beat the man. So so it's gonna be But also too, the event of the weekend, and seriously, bro, I couldn't wait for this one. This one, man. I was trying to save money for the pay. This month, man, it's gonna be pay-per-view month. This whole fucking month, man. Holy crap! I mean, I'm excited for this one. Chavez Jr. Anderson Silva. Even though that's the co-main event, this is the fight that I've been looking forward to since it got made. This one's wild. This one's in Mexico. I saw a little bit of the highlights of the press conference that was held, I believe, today or yesterday. And man, it looked lit. It looks like the Mexicanos are ready for this one. It's just so sick that kind of a weird exhibition fight, but I like it, man. That's all I could say. And but also
I'm surprised
the main event,
that Junior and Silva's not getting a little bit more attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just believe because it's titled an exhibition and not a professional fight, so it's like,
and they're both
you know what I mean?
so
I'm assuming
washed.
And also
so
it's a co-main. I believe there's a co-main event. Yeah, definitely. So it's just, but I love it, man. I love this fight. I can't wait to see it. Anderson Silva, let's see what you got in boxing. But Chavez Jr. is holding boxing on his back for us, man. And you better, bro, Chavez Jr. better not fail us in this one. That's all I can say in Mexico. So, shout out to Chavez.
Better than Junior in this fight. No, I'm just playing.
Oh man, that would suck. But Senior, bro, but Senior, man, has got a pretty good fight with him. The build up to the fight has been kind of nice. They've been pushing each other during the stare downs. Hector Camacho Jr., the son of the legend. So this one's gonna be dope. I would tell the casual fans, if they're waiting on, they're deciding, or the casual fans are deciding, what should we watch this weekend? Munguia, Charlo, Teofimo. I say put your money on this Chavez Senior fight, bro. Watch this one, man. This one's gonna be lit. This one's in Mexico. We're out there. We're gonna be, supporting our own, man. And I just can't say nothing.
Is it? What's the price point? Like $29.99 or $39.99?
I believe it's low. It's not that much. It's not
pretty
50.
Sure.
So I haven't checked it 100%, but it's not a $70 pay-per-view. So you know what I mean.
Yeah,
and,
usually those
integrated
sports are cheaper, are a little bit less expensive.
Yeah. Nope. So definitely, man. But definitely stay tuned to this one, bro. And but yeah, man. Bro, there's holy crap! There's so many fights this weekend. I'm staying tuned to all of them, and I can't wait to talk to you about them, Chris. And and also too, before I get out of here, man, I know this is kind of blasphemy talk, but a Mexicano, Brandon Moreno, 130, I believe, 125-pounder in the UFC, just won a belt. So from Mexico, from the motherland. So I want to shout out to you, man. You got it. You did it. It was a rear naked choke. I saw that, man, and holy crap, man! Let's celebrate, bro. We're celebrating with you. It's always, It's always like I say, man. Viva Mexico, man. We're man. This is the year of the Mexicans, man. That's all I can say, man. I'm just so proud of what has happened this year so far, man. And man, it's just so sick. So But yeah, man. Moreno deserves respect. I know it's UFC, but man, I'm just proud of this guy. You know what I mean? Because he really. Man, that fight, I got to see it, and I got to see the first fight, and because I bought that pay-per-view, but I didn't buy this one just because I wanted to wait for the Chavez Jr. fight. You know what I mean? That's why. And but I'm also buying the other one. What's that? Tank Davis in the next weekend, I believe. So So like I said, man, this like I said, this
that'd be the Mexican upset of the year right there. Besides Lara.
Man, that would just
solidify it.
Yeah,
that would, dude. That would be over the top, dude.
Yeah, bro. It would be like, bro, we're like living in Mexico. Like this country has turned to Mexico. You know what I mean? So, but man, and but yeah, man. As far as that, I'm just excited about these weekends. You already know. I'm telling the casual fans and the MMA fans to buy the Chavez Senior fight and the Chavez Junior fight because that one's going to be electrifying. And but yeah, man. As far as that, Chris, I don't have too much to say. Thank you for having me on. Viva Rope Dope Radio and Viva Mexico, cabrones.
All right, man. You take it easy. Always good to hear you and give your takes and thoughts and whatnot. Just a little bit more left of the show, current fight news, and then we'll close on the boxing Twitter segment per usual. Talk a little Wilder Fury 3. We all know it's happening. But the tickets, I believe, either are going to go on sale or they're on a pre-sale or some shit. But the tomorrow, during the afternoon, late afternoon, unless you're West Coast, then I think it's 1 o'clock. The first presser, it'll be kind of interesting there. We'll talk a little bit about the undercard and just a variety of other things. It was reported, we were talking about Mayweather and Logan, that it did right around slightly more than 1 million buys. I saw a report of 600,000 or 650,000 of the, the cable buys, basically, the cable operators, and then that would put it right around 400,000-ish, 350-ish on the app. So that's pretty good money. If let's say 35 to 40% of your buys are digital, that would be big. because you get to keep that money. But either way, another thing that people aren't necessarily looking at is ever since 2015 when Showtime started having a streaming service, right? This is the biggest single-day new sub sign-up for Showtime since they started with their streaming service, their standalone streaming service. So remember, this has to do with marketing as well. So let's say they broke even. You know, with these purse guarantees, who the fuck knows? I mean, we heard 20 million, 30 million. People were saying 100 million. There's so many bullshit reports out there sometimes. You don't know what's what. But this is marketing 101, though, to have that many signups. And they gave you a free month. So we were talking about that Triller Pass and how that thing's way overpriced because you're just, you know, someone did text me saying, well, if you paid $30 for a month and then you deleted it, then you'd pay $30 for the pay-per-view and that's it. And if you can do that, okay, that saves you $30. I'll give you that. But how many times are you going to be able to do that, though? Are they going to allow you to do that every month or every other month or when they have fights? My biggest thing is the price point, one, but two, you don't even have announced fights. Now, I assume they're going to announce Oscar's fight and maybe Holyfield fight. If they don't, after this weekend, they're just silly to try to sell that fight pass. But I'm assuming they're going to announce Oscar's fight, and Holyfield's supposed to have a fight as well. But back to that Showtime sign-up, they set the 1-day record of sign-ups. So they gave people a 30-day free trial. And then after that expires for 3 months, it's $4.99. So, and look at their schedule. It goes till September. So basically, for a boxing event, for a boxing, 4 months basically, Showtime's got some bomb-ass fights. And then obviously, beyond just sports documentary, they have good to great documentaries. And they have shows and movies. So, I mean, that's a damn good. We talk about entertainment value. That's pretty good. So yeah, we'll, we've kind of talked through a lot of this weekend stuff. There is some other news. Top Rank at Sky Sports struck a 4-year deal to actually this, Shakur Stevenson and his fight was on there. Obviously, Eddie Hearn, no surprise, went to DAZN. We've known that for quite some time. And so that's where, Top Rank's been kind of all over the place. I felt bad for the UK there for a while because they were missing out on certain fights or maybe even like a inexpensive pay-per-view or whatever. But now their fights are going to be shown, Top Rank fights, on Sky Sports. And also, just to keep it in that realm, Teofimo Lopez and Top Rank kind of basically amended their deal. So the minimum purses will go up in general, but also if he's on pay-per-view, clearly your purse is going to go up. And according to Coppinger, after this fight, they're going to be looking for an October 2nd name to put him in with. So they kind of made it seem a little weird about the Haney thing because he still has an issue with Eddie Hearn and DAZN. Like they have, I think it's a match. We can match someone's offer, so we have a right to match refusal or whatever. So if they send Hearn an offer, he can match it, and so that wouldn't be on ESPN Plus. They want it on their pay-per-view, I should say. Now, hopefully, this deal isn't he's going to be on ESPN pay-per-view all the time because, to be honest with you, they don't have a lot of opponents beyond Josh Taylor for him, pay-per-view level anyway. So hopefully it's ESPN Plus and then pay-per-view for some of these opponents. Hopefully it's ESPN as well. But the way Coppinger made it sound, I don't know. Now, Top Rank, this is actually in that article with that Sky Sports thing. It sounds like they would. Here's the quote: Top Rank will ramp up putting on events in the UK that would air in Sky Sports prime time. And so that would probably be on ESPN Plus over here, and then primetime there. They'll probably do some of that, according to them. As we know, it looks like Fury, and this is Jake Donovan, Fury and Wilder 3 will be at the T-Mobile Arena. They're putting a venue hold on it. So maybe it's not going to be at that big stadium. And now, maybe they say, hey, we can actually sell this out normally. We don't have to space it out in the stadium. Who knows? Speaking of stadium, Canelo and Saunders, the numbers are in. 66,000 tickets sold in a $9 million gate. So that's like pretty close to what I think, was it 12 million that Klitschko and was it 10 or 12 million that Klitschko and Joshua did. I know he's done some other gates right around that. So yeah, 9 million off of that live gate. We got the number back. The Wilder Fury, just to stay in that realm too. Obviously, we know, July 24th. We'll get everything finalized tomorrow for sure. Of course, Fury and Wilder in the, in the main event, the trilogy. But then it's Efe Ajagba, an unbeaten contender, we'll call him, against Frank Sanchez, an unbeaten contender, we'll call him, prospect. So 2 unbeaten guys, one with top rank, one with the PBC. Efe used to be with the PBC, but he's no longer. So I love that. They're not young guys. They're not super old either. Sanchez is older, but I like that. 2 undefeated guys. Let's see what they got. And then Helenius and Koznowski, which was a damn good fight while it lasted. Koznowski had the advantage, had Helenius hurt early, ended up getting hurt and getting knocked out. But that's a good heavyweight fight, just action-packed. Casuals will like that, Helenius and Konaki. So those are 2 good, really, fights. And then Jared Anderson, an up-and-coming hot prospect in the heavyweight division, is on the card, too. So I'm very, very happy. Eddie Hearn stated, this is from DAZN Boxing, the DAZN Boxing show, that they will be making an offer to Caleb Plant this week. He expects from DAZN, and then he expects, PBC and Fox to give Canelo an offer. One thing he did say is he's worried about the August, like the July. Well, we talked about some of the pay-per-views, which most of them are exhibitions besides one. 2. Triller's not an exhibition either. But you look at July has 1, August will have 2. And then, 3 weeks later, something like that, 3 weeks later, I think, would be that one. He said he's worried about the paper, which kind of sounds like, hold on, dude, I thought you were are you advising him, or are you working this deal and negotiating with him? I just hope he keeps the negotiations out of the media. That's what I hope. Jermell Charlo versus Brian Castano for the Undisputed at 154 will be taking place July 17th, as we know, at the AT&T Center in San Antonio, Texas, it sounds like. So that's kind of I didn't know exactly if that would be the venue or something like that. So that's kind of interesting. What else we got for news? I think it's mostly boxing, Twitter with a little blend of it. This is Shakur Stevenson on Twitter. I apologize to all my fans. I didn't feel good tonight, but I did what I had to do to get the win. Thank you for all the support. I promise a better fight, in fights to come, which, I understand why he's saying that. Many casual boxing fans overlook a boxer's technical boxing abilities and want boxers to be knocked out, boxers to knock out, I think he meant, punchers over anything. The sad thing is many of these writers are acting like these casuals. That's fair, but I don't really think that everybody was saying you need to stop them. You just need to throw more punch. How about a 2-punch combo? Would that be too much? Here we go. So we found out why, and I kind of heard some rumors of this, but I didn't want to say it for sure. I wanted to get back to you guys. But and actually, Deuce Ranger Rollins on Twitter, great follow, by the way. Shouts out to you, Deuce. According to Eddie Hearn said this, that, the reason why the John Ryder-Morrell fight didn't happen is because he actually was looking for a better purse split from the WBA. So he basically was like, either you give us a better purse split, which would allow him to bid and buy the fight and bring it to the UK, or we're not going to do the fight, period. We're not going to do it at the Armory. So that's what it was. But then I hear this, Ryder may be moving up to face Dmitry Bivol at 175. And it's like, I get why you take a bigger, more money fight to go up there. But damn, that going up there, I'm not quite sure on that one. This is actually John. We had him on earlier on Twitter. How does Triller go from some entertaining, wacky stuff featuring old boxers and a Paul brother to getting their pocket picked by Showtime and ending up with an alphabet mandatory mismatch on pay-per-view broadcast by Jim Lantley? And that is a good call, because Triller were making fun of, the debacle that exhibition was, but they had plenty of debacles. My experience has Money and Sweet Pea being debated as the best defensive fighter in my lifetime. Shakur is already harder to hit than both of those legends. Give me a fucking break, dude. I love me some Shakur Stevenson in a lot of ways, but come on, dude. Like, let him fight someone before you. Whitaker and Mayweather defense? Come on, dude. This is Rick. Next week, I hope to wrap up 6 fight deals, including a world title eliminators, 3 main events, 2 co-main events, and a TV opener, and an arena fight that would break California attendance this year to promote. Interesting. This is Jim Carras, boxing, good follower too, great follower for betting and all that. Babic won, by the way. He blew somebody out. I forgot to mention that too. And I'm glad that Portland mentioned Shields and Serrano. This is when I was going to mention him during that. Babic will never even basically he's a goon. Babic will never get even close to being world level, but it's going to be a fun ride watching his career. Every shot is thrown with full power, and he has no regard for what's coming back. He's a beauty. He is. He's just that goon-level dude who's just, fun to watch. This is Bruce Trampler from Top Rank, long time with Top Rank. People asking me about the recent Floyd Mayweather exhibition, and I thought it was terrific for fans to see an all-time great in action one more time. I was on several exhibition tours with Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, George Foreman. Fans loved it. All the greats did it. And that is one of those things that people don't realize, that so many, so many people did that. Legends, did these exhibitions. Bivol had a nice little run going Barrera, Pascal, and Smith. Last 2 fights have been a waste with Castillo and Richards. Now it's being said he could fight Ryder moving up to 168 next. Matchroom are wasting one of the best talents in the sport. I mean, I got to admit, some of that's true. Okay, here's what De La Hoya said with what he wants to do with Zurdo Ramirez, who they just signed. De La Hoya, we want to get Zurdo Ramirez to 52-0 and break the record of Floyd Mayweather. Well, wouldn't that be 50-0? We won't get into that. But then Harry Smith says Zurdo is a great fighter, and once he gets his 52-0 record, it will be interesting to see what he could do when he steps up the competition. Very exciting, eventually. What? Like, huh? Like, that's what we're going with? Like, so we're going to, so you're not going to put him, so you're excited to watch him fight. He's 41-0 right now, so he's going to fight another 9 fights or 10, 12 fights. Like, first of all, he's got to get by Sullivan Barrera coming up, But it's just like, I just see there's some fanboy stuff or people that will just like one side for the hell of it, but how could you look at that and go, yeah, dude, I'm pumped, dude. Once he gets 10 more fights, it's really going to be interesting to watch his career. So don't get me wrong, I like Zerto, but he's just got to, fight somebody. At age 47, Bernard Hopkins fought above his natural weight and won a world title from someone who's still ranked at 175. What's Floyd's excuse? The thing is, that was an exhibition. People really just, it's so funny. Like, so is that what we're gonna go with that? We're gonna be like, all right, so everybody who ever fought has to do what Bernard Hopkins did. Because Bernard, now how about it just goes with this Manny Pacquiao Floyd stuff now too. I can big up and give a bunch of credit to Manny Pacquiao and Bernard Hopkins without dumping on another fighter. In this case, we're talking about Floyd Mayweather. Just a way to dump on fighters, no matter who's involved with this stuff. It's just funny how people will tweak their little stuff just to make sure that they can get a shot at someone. It's really funny. This was from Lazy Lefty. I think I mentioned this a little earlier. Herring makes a good point when he said fighting Valdez is better business and legacy. Shakur jumped on a restaurant table saying he wants to fight him. Now Shakur said he'd rather fight Valdez because it's good business, and he easily beat Herring. That is kind of funny. Stevenson has said a bunch of stuff like, oh, this guy ducked me, and, I can get a tune-up fight in, but he can't. I'm ready to fight, 6 to 8 weeks later. Just all sorts of stuff without just going right at it. Sean Gibbons and Victor Conte, you really need to get on Twitter. And, wow. Wow. Okay, this is the tweet. This is the tweet of the day, or of the week, which is so silly too. Major props to Clarissa Shields, the only boxer. Now remember, the only boxer with the guts to step into MMA and have an actual fight under their rules. The only boxer, they just said. So Amanda Serrano, screw her, right? I guess she's not stepping up in the MMA. Heather Hardy, she's not. Do we even have to mention the, Holly Holm, the girl who stopped this crazy, huge women's star, in Rousey? But yet, she to sit there and this has got to be trolling. But, I didn't see him really respond to people. Like, oh, my bad. So basically, anybody that, remember, it's MMA fighters that are challenging boxers because this is their biggest payday. As we know, the UFC doesn't fall under the Ali Act, which allows fighters and their management to see everything to do with the event. Back in the day when HBO would give money to your promoter, you get to see how much money they gave to your promoter, how much, what's your budget on the whole card, what do you expect to make, what's your overhead, all this stuff, right? And that's why fighters generally get like 70, 80% of the money when it's just the flip way with UFC. But to sit there and say she's the only boxer with the MMA, boxers aren't calling out MMA people because they know that's a different sport. That's what they say all the time. It really started with Anderson Silva and Roy Jones Jr. That's the first one that I remember. Don't get me wrong. I know old-ass, fat-ass James Toney got in the ring, right? I know that. But I'm saying as far as a real fight that got people's interest, that they were talking about it was Anderson Silva and Roy Jones Jr. This is like literally over a decade ago. And that's what got people pumped. But remember, it hasn't been – Mayweather, he tells you that they're like all these famous fighters, boxers, are not saying, dude, those MMA dudes are bullshit. I can go in that cage and kick their ass. They're not saying that shit. I've never heard any of them say that. Now, maybe someone that wrestled in high school at a high level, there has been some of those guys where they say they think they get hang or something. But it hasn't been this big call-out. Like, you're afraid of me to jump into MMA. You're afraid for a boxer to come. Like, it's just so stupid. It's such a trolling tweet, especially when you have Serrano. Holly Holm knocked out Rousey, dude. That was supposed to be the best. I mean, don't tell this to Serena Williams, but that was supposed to be the best all-time ever female athlete. Forget Martina Navratilova, forget all these track stars. Like, for real, dude? Like, it's just, man, some of these, oh, my God. It's like, see, there it goes. You got to dump on something to give someone props. Can't you just say it's bomb that Clarissa Shields? Listen to what Portland just said. That is dope. She went and did this. It's cool to see a boxer do that. And it is. It takes guts. But to say you don't have the guts, they don't have the guts. Oh, yeah, like, so how many more deaths over the years have happened in boxing? You want to talk about guts. How many deaths have happened? It's proven now for quite some time that if you want to talk about death and brain damage, boxing is more dangerous. I mean, Dana White says it all the time. So this whole guts thing, fighting is fighting, dude. I respect both. I wrestled in high school, so I've always respect MMA. And my friends will always be like, don't put me in a move. And I didn't even do jiu-jitsu or nothing like that. You know what I mean? But it just, I can't believe you're just going to gloss over Soriano and especially Holly Holm, who stopped the hype train. I mean, Rousey got on the cover of Ring Magazine, for Christ's sakes. And Holly Holm put a stop to that shit. Knocked her teeth out, dude. But Clarissa, and I'm not dogging on Clarissa. It does take, guts, but it takes guts to be a fighter. Either side, MMA. But it's always been the MMA folks that would be like, oh, boxing, we killed boxing. Boxing's dead. Why did an exhibition where the star of the show said it's a legal bank robbery, I'm working out every 3 days to not get hurt? Why'd that do over $1 million? Why are all these biggest paydays Woodley's about to get his biggest payday coming out of a long run of UFC. It's like, you guys are really worried about your sport too much. Like, you just, oh, man, it is funny. Like, how you going to dog Soriano, dude? She's a stud, dude. Like, and I mean that in the nicest way. I know she's a pretty lady. I'm not trying to say stud. Like, she's very pretty, too. But I'm just saying, like, oh, my God. I got to stop the show. I'm going to just keep this going too long. All right, we'll be back next week per usual. Let's hope we get these undercard bouts to hopefully there's undercard fights that pop off, right, that are competitive two-way fights. And then the main events are fun while they lasted, but they ended knockout. We'll be back next week. It might be another Monday, so stay tuned. Anyway, enjoy the fights. See you soon. Peace.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you feel you have the upper hand. So now, as you fight, let's say you fight 4 or 5 years of straight survival, the bullshit, the whole bag, and when you become the world champion, you're like, you know what, I made it. I'm going to show you it's business. So I'm going to get every dollar worth of what I deserve. Why? Because I'm the world champion.